Got the inside. Does Leskala send it deep? Yes, he does. He knows he's going to have to force Rolla a little bit wide, but he leaves him space. Rolla gets the inside, coming down to the Sachs curve, but he's timid on the brakes, and almost a Vettel situation there with Yuko Leskala taking it deep, but somehow he holds on, and they carry on this side-by-side battle. Now into the south curve, and around, still on the inside. Yuko Leskala will not give way.
Here they come on to the front straightaway towards Nord Curve. Someone's going to have to give here. You can't go through this thing too wide. And Yuko finally gives up the ghost and lets Billy go through. But Billy takes it a little bit too deep. Yusko's got another opportunity towards the entrance of the Parabolica.
This battle will not quit. Down to the Parabolica entry. He's got the inside one more time. Will the throttle pedal make the difference here coming off the corner? It does seem to for Vili Rolla. He briefly has a nose ahead, but now momentum goes back to Yuko Leskala. It's the long way around the Parabolica, but it'll be the inside coming down into the Spitzkara. This has been an incredible battle. They've now practically gone a full lap side by side here. Down into the corner and smoking the tires once again. Leskala somehow manages to make that shallow line work. Yep, this is down into turn 2. Really wants to cut into that apex, but there is that gray and blue car there. It carries on as it swings back through turn 3. Muirhead gets a little bit of an edge. Excuse me, Boucher does, but now as they come to the left-hander, this is not the place he wants to be. He lifts a little bit early. He still carries the speed through, goes a little wide. Is that one going to count, or is he going to be given a slowdown? It counts, and Boucher is going to move into 10th.
We've got a little bit of a pass going on here. Mies trying to make the move down to the inside here as they go into Cunningham. Side by side with Felipe Loyola. And that is going to be Mies with the nose ahead. Tries to give a little bit of an elbows out move, but now the track is going to favor back to Felipe Loyola. Under heavy braking. Who's it going to be?
We got a battle farther up ahead, and this is Karthik Pai side by side Lino Frisha. Lino's going to be able to get ahead of him. He's going to go for another one. He's not just taking one, but he's too hot into the corner, and that goes into the side of the Texan. And in the midst of it all, how about Ove Trangrade getting 3 spots in a single corner?
Oh, but handling it well, did exactly the right thing, came off the throttle, just kept the wheel as straight as he could, ease the car back up on as he comes past the lap traffic here. Scarali, is that Scarali who went off up there? Is he going to get up? It looks like he's going to catch Scarali. Scarali's getting caught up with this lap traffic as Chiquita tries to get around him going through. Oh, nice pass. Mr. Sneaky pulls it off again.
This is what he's been waiting for. Now he definitely has enough speed, but oh look, he's not even as close as he is. He's not able to use that toe to try and attack, so he's going to go around the outside, trying to break deeper, cutting back underneath, but that's going to give the inside down into the chicane to Tom Layton. Can he do it here this time? No, breaks a little bit earlier. Shallow line, another chance to maybe pull the over-under, but it's not there as he parks it on the apex.
This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in endorsed series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
Several weeks ago, the Major Series started its European campaigns off with a bang. Dallas Pataska and Jamie Conway started their respective seasons by winning at the newly updated Watkins Glen International. Several others that entered that round had a chance to win it, but instead, they couldn't keep themselves out of trouble. Today brings a different type of challenge for drivers looking to avoid being involved in chaos. It's the type of challenge where the big one could happen at any time, where high speeds are to be expected, and where massive sends could be the difference between who takes the checkered flag and who is spinning coming off into Calamity Corner. And with a new car and a whole new superspeedway package on iRacing for it, anything could happen today. This is the Major Series version of the Great American Race, the Daytona 500, live on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hello everyone and welcome to the second race of the European region's Pro Split season here at iRacing's virtual World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth for this run will be Christian Chowder and Jake Sperry. Behind the scenes is our director Zach Johnson, and he's using the cameras provided by the great Dougie Beard. Today takes us to a track that has a long history in motorsports. Let's learn more about Daytona International Speedway with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Daytona International Speedway. This track began life after Bill France Sr. realized the Daytona Beach road course had outgrown itself. With ambitious plans and the blessing of the city officials, he built what would become the very first superspeedway in NASCAR history. At 2.5 miles and with 31 degrees of banking, stock cars easily reach speeds of around 200 miles per hour. Pretty much every car can take the course flat out. This makes for one of the most unique styles of racing motorsports has ever seen. The slipstream allows drivers to stay with one another so easily that it becomes less about the speeds each driver can reach and more about the strategy of racing in a pack. Bump drafting is a technique in which the car behind actually pushes the car in front so that both are able to reach higher speeds. And side drafting is another in which the drivers use the air off the sides of their cars to slow their opponents down. Staying out of trouble is always a difficult aspect of superspeedway racing, and it's not uncommon to see drivers intentionally move to the back of the pack to avoid the chaos. In fact, the high speeds make large wrecks so hard to avoid that the term "the big one" has become commonplace to refer to the almost inevitable multi-car pileups the circuit is known for. Also, entering pit lane is its own skill, which requires practice in order to slow the car up as quickly and safely as possible. Keeping the car clean and in contention is the main goal for much of the event. Then the final few laps, it's a race to the line, with any alliances usually dissolving and the driver's urge to win taking over. With it being home to one of the world's most famous races, the Daytona 500, fans from around the globe flock to this landmark circuit. Just like the cars on it, the Daytona International Speedway shows no signs of slowing down.
That was a look at our GSRC track guide for Daytona. Now, Christian, I want to start with you today, not just because you raced at one time in eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series and had to prepare for this racetrack, but for this year's edition of this race, with this being so different with the next-gen car, a car that you mentioned having a play in how these cars could handle today, what will we see from Daytona here today with a new generation of cars on the super speedway today?
Yeah, it's definitely quite a bit different than what we've had in the past, I would say. Obviously, it's the same track, really, 2.5 miles. I would categorize this as sort of the easier but the narrower of the two super speedways. Obviously, Talladega has got a little bit more open corners, but is a little bit rougher as the track goes. What I think really the key today is going to be taking advantage of the runs that you're able to build, especially if you're actually towards the tail end of the pack. But you can make 3 wide work. I think we're definitely going to see a lot of 2 wide at minimum, but you can make 3 wide work and get all the way to the lead from the tail end of the pack. But you've got to maintain your lane discipline really, really well, and you've got to have a lot of trust in the other drivers out there to be able to make that work. So I think, especially towards the end of the race, we should expect to see a third lane form if there isn't one already and come from the back of the field.
Very curious to see if that top lane does form. Some drivers were testing that out in final practice just moments ago. Speaking of drivers at the top of things, at the top of the board in the pro standings entering today are 2 drivers, as it was a multi-class round, meaning Dallas Pataska, Jamie Conway both scored a 238-point total to start the season. Chris Barrett comes into today third, tied with that spot with Ryan Wachuletsky. Of note, though, the Satellite Racing driver did not hit the minimum required practice laps, so the tied for third place driver in points will not start today. Monerwich is tied for 5th entering today with Rui Quados. And in turn, that brings us towards the AM side of things, or rather the sportsman side of the standings, where those standings after their run see Brian Boomstra and Eric Rieg tied up at 238 themselves. Blomqvist, along with Kane Schwan, round out the top 4. Shelley and Marin tied up in the opening round of the campaign. Again, the separation's about 30 points from first in the classes to second. You also have to factor in the next grouping of drivers underneath as well, because there is only one driver in Sportman General this season so far, in David Baker, but it's Sportsman's side for the Legend side. Sees that driver from the top running. And Schrott in first for the Legend Sports standings. Jay Broney is 35 points back. Hellstrom, Thomas, Andy Banfield round out the top 5 on that side. And in turn, Jake, that brings the conversation over to what the teams will have to fare with today. Because the teams, there are plenty in this series. Teamwork is big in this series in turn. Let's take a look at the team standings after Watkins Glen.
Absolutely, and this for Satellite Racing was probably just about as good as they could manage, getting the big victory, 629 points, but they look behind at the Apex Tech Racing Pro team, and they really did a great job of putting themselves in play, giving themselves opportunities, and that's why those two are head and shoulders above the field already. 112 back to the 2 Grizzly teams, the Le Mans team ahead of the Daytona team, so I'm sure that the 4th team, the Daytona one, will have a good running on name soil, so to speak. And then Team Mad in 5th position had a pretty, I would say, standard outing for them there in 5th, but they've got work to do if they want this season to effectively claw their way back to them.
Don't forget as well on the AM side, or the sportsman side, there were plenty of powerful teams on that regard too, Jake. We get the chance to look at those as well up here.
Absolutely, and it was the NRG Racing ES team that put themselves up at the top, but it's a lot closer than what some of the others are. Bright Esports moving into 2nd with HW Racing there in 3rd, but those 3 teams that are really creating a nice dynamic. No Emission Motorsports there are in 4th position, 177 points back, and you can see the Racing Turtles. I'm not sure if they're teenage or mutant, but they're 5th.
Yes is the answer to that question. Yes is the best way to answer it. Christian, let's talk about the race format, because here's the thing. drivers have had duels throughout the past week to set their qualifying position. In turn, though, it's a full distance race today.
Yeah, so throughout the week we've had 50-lap duel races, and obviously they've been quite frantic, everybody trying to get to the front, and we've had quite a lot of cautions. I don't think I was in one that ever went green flag all the way through. Certainly never had to make a green flag pit stop, and bringing it across to that point, obviously 200-lap race, the fuel mileage is anywhere between really 40 to 45 laps, and that's quite a big window, probably bigger than people are sort of used to in this kind of racing. And the reason for that is when you're in the pack, and especially if you're on the bottom line, you can just save so much fuel because it's stacking up so much. So there's going to be some strategy plays, especially if we do get some green flag pit stops, and I'm interested to see how that works out. Along with that, 8 total tire sets. At Daytona, to be honest, that's just not really a concern. There's not really much of a reason to be coming down and getting tires, so it's not kind of like a Homestead or a Rockingham or whatnot in that sense. 26 incident limit is sort of the same thing, though with the next gen car, and especially with this new drafting package, you can stay in the draft a bit more easily than you used to be able to with a damaged car, so it's possible we'll see some people getting up near that incident limit, but typically if you're up at 26, your car's done and you're going to be out of the race. 2 green-white checkers. That could be interesting. I can totally see us getting through both of those at the end of the race.
Drivers are currently in the midst of their final practice, have also just wrapped up a lengthy drivers meeting. The minimum speed expectations for today is about 53 seconds if you want to stay on the circuit. In our words, don't get significant damage if you want to keep on running for the 200 laps, 500 miles today. I'd like to take the time to remind you, first of all, though, with those duels and qualifying runs throughout the week, that the charity for this event being supported is Cancer Society of New Zealand. To learn more about that, be sure to visit www.cancer.org.nz to be able to follow along and learn more. But in turn, with this run, we're about 1 p.m. in sim. It's a cool day, Jake. Very cool track conditions for this one. 94 degrees Fahrenheit, 73 air temp for reference. So in our words, fair amount of grip, fair amount of speed.
It's a cool day, but the track temperature is the key there. I think it's pretty ideal, actually, to go out there and race. It's not too cold where you're going to be flying around and it's going to be easy to spin it up. And it's not too hot either, where you're going to be starting to deal with a few of those issues that you get over the course of long runs. It's the perfect middle ground to go out there and put some good racing in today. And I think one of the keys you're going to be seeing is that evolution of the track. We're currently in sim conditions at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so we're at the zenith of the track and the air temperatures. And as this race starts to reach maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours out there in terms of the efforts that they get into, it is going to start just dialing back, getting a little quicker as they go around the circuit. So if they are spending quite a long time out there, get a lot of cautions over the course of a race, then this track temperature could play a huge factor in the racing.
Don't forget, with the way the next-gen car is built, you cannot realistically put the tape on the front grille compared to the Gen 6 car or in many other generations. But also, it is worth noting, Christian, the lower the air temp, the longer you can push.
Yeah, absolutely. Next Gen uses a pretty different way of ducting the air through the front of the car. So now there's no longer an advantage to having grill tape even.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of said grid, yes, indeed. Let's see which drivers have taped their names at the top of the pylon and found ways to get ladders to go to the top of the pylon to get it to fit on the scoring pylon. Adam Ponti set the fastest grouping in the duels. He'll start on the pole today. While Alexander Russell, a name very familiar in stock car racing on the service, he'll start second with his run today in Euro Pro action. Chris Barrett starts in third today. His team looking to bounce back after some rough runs in Sports Car Open action, while Gavin Monerwich will start in fourth. Ross Banfield starts in fifth with Jamie Conway in the sixth position. Bobrovsky will start in seventh position. Then it's Mark Redford in eighth. Julian Jean starts in ninth. Cordell Cologne rounds out the top 10. Jake.
And moving over then to row 6 of the grid, David H. Baker will have for company Kamal Hashimi there who will be looking to get a good run in the 37. Jan Dirks will go from what is 13th, and Joshua Wolf, a regular to the series, has been here for a long time. He'll go from 14th and is always a threat late in races. David Soranzo and Travis Henderson, they'll have row 8 of the grid with Gabriel Roos and Thomas Geisler, who set the fastest times in practice. He's there in 18th position. Theo Schleray will go from 19th, and he'll be joined by Thor Tullow, the Brit, in the 90.
Then back in 21st, a bit of a surprise here. Dallas Pataska starting really far back with Thomas Cope alongside him in 22nd. Daniel Solo and Henrik Beilet back there in 23rd and 24th. Ryan G. Walker also back there in 25th with Jens Holman alongside him in 26th. Miguel Freitas in 27th with Hugh Haycox in 28th. Bram Reiners, another driver who we're not used to seeing this far back. He's there in 29th with Dominic Lababa in 30th.
31st spot today goes to an air newcomer for today, the 265. That is Mario Schroer. Then it's Hansen Pete in 32nd. Scott Brazier starts alongside Sean Campbell. Then it's more trailing Rain Sengali Navarro, the 39 drivers who have made it to the field today. As these drivers get ready to go, I'd like to take the time to remind you that the Majors Series is presented by Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7. Sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions, telemetry, coaching, and more at majorsgarage.com, or use the special discount code MajorsGSRC for 10% off. We have a link in the description of the YouTube broadcast below that directly applies to the special offer. 500 miles ready to go, a new era of stock car racing. And Majors Series action is all set to rein it on in. iRacing pace car is off. The green flag is up. We're underway from Daytona. A strong start for the 150 after a slow launch on the bottom into turn 1 and 2, was still able to get back to the race lead by 3 and 4. He leads the opening lap of 200 today. And keep in mind, Christian, that top line expected to get a massive boost on the restarts today, hence why Russell had such a good run to start.
Yeah, in the past we've generally seen that the bottom is the place to be on restarts at Daytona, but now the top line, if it gets formed up quickly, which it tends to do on restarts now, they can really get a huge launch on the exit of turn 2, as the 777 is already down on pit road, only 2 laps into the race.
A couple drivers did start for the pit lane initially. Wolf and Baker were among the list of cars who did not take the green. Banfield has already taken a pit stop on lap 2. And he will lose a lap just about nearly. In fact, will as a result here. So a rough start for Banfield season.
It's a rough start, but you have a look at the front, and I find it so interesting. Everyone was covering up that high line going through lap 2, but here on lap 3, the bottom is starting to form quite nicely, and the move being made there from Alexander Russell then on the bottom of the circuit, looking to try and get the 27 into position. It's a fantastic set of lines that we've got, and they are stretching back 10, 12, 14 back as they go through. This is what we like to see, 2 very strong grooves, but going through 3 and 4, you can see there, Justin, that the second group just starts to splinter because drivers are looking for that safety. They're trying to, if they can, get down to the bottom line, which is the safer place on the circuit.
By the way, just got confirmation Ross Banfield was a part of the list of drivers who start from the pit lane, but they also had an unsafe pit exit, hence why a secondary stop of 31 seconds for the 777. But it's Russell who leads the conga line at the bottom, and one of the main differences compared to prior to the update at the end of January was, Christian, The ability to run side by side like this, because before, to be frank, you'd be stuck in a single file line with the side draft force.
Yeah, I have to admit it was pretty single file before. Obviously now we've kind of kept all of the good things about what we had with that model, with the side draft and whatnot, but we can definitely get top line, middle line, and runs from the back of the field really going much better than we could before. Now, something I want to point out is the side draft is still very, very critical, and you do have to know how to work it, and you do have to be careful of it. So in one of the dual races we did a couple of nights ago, we were actually able to make a run come up through the middle of the pack, but as soon as people near the front realized what we were doing, they started side drafting and pulling us back. And we really got a little bit lucky, I would say, because we had some people kind of still with momentum who were able to push us all the way through into the front of the lead. But it's definitely quite tactical. You can see here the top line is now very, very bunched up coming off of 4. They've got a pretty nice run, but nobody up there is really doing anything to try and pull cars apart on the bottom of the racetrack. Now, really you want the leader to do that. If you're further back in the line, you don't want to be trying to do that because you'll just slow yourself down and break apart your own line. So there is a lot of nuance to it, and it's really, really dependent, I would say, on the first 3 to 4 cars in a line. I know that sounds obvious, but if you have 3 to 4 cars in any of the lines, bottom or top, who really know what they're doing, as you can see here, they're able to make moves happen.
See the tandem draft working a little bit for the past couple laps on the top line. Fittipaldi now up to the race lead at 150 once again. Not electing to pull on down though. Monerwich he's working with. Also Mark Redford is in that respective line. So things looking like both lines can work out here so far. But there is, however, one thing, Jake. There's already a second pack. Some of the drivers have lost 3 seconds already because the 077, significant front nose damage from the initial start, I believe. Yes, he may have ran over a car off the launch.
And that's certainly not ideal. If you're out of the back already, it's going to be a long road to get back, and you're effectively working as a group of 6 or 7 up against a group of a lot at the front. It's 28 in the front group, so that's going to be really tough to rally back, and it's not going to work out easily. Now, what I was interested with on that high line as we were going through laps 4 and 5 was the fact that it dropped back almost 4 cars back in the train, but nobody decided they wanted to cut from that bottom line up to the top, take the lead of that second line away and go out there and attack. They just drove on back, got people in the group, got 7 up there, and that's why they're working. The high line is being loved right now by Fittipaldi in the 150. Now, Narovich and Redford are certainly looking good, but once again, it swings and roundabouts because that bottom line, the more that you leave it open, the more they're going to have a chance to just sneak on underneath.
This package, keep in mind the max speed going into the from the straightaways to the corners about 193 miles per hour currently here at Daytona. Now here's the interesting thing here too, Christian. I think big picture wise too is different car means different type of gearing. An additional forward gear or 5th gear is available, and for some, it's important to know about that for one, but 2, how to manage that, because if you say keep it in 4th gear, that is much more fuel burn compared to 5th gear.
Yeah, obviously the engine itself is quite flat, so you can get away with really winding it out in 4th. Wouldn't advise it personally, but you can get away with it. And you know, with the gearing, prior to, well, pretty much a week or so ago, we didn't actually know what the rear gear ratio was going to be for the real car. So the gearing is open, so they're free to really do what they want this week.
Oh, that's so clever!
Nice move here to the bottom of the track.
No, what's crucial about that move, it was all teammates who did that, so they coordinated that move to put themselves on the bottom line and completely stifle the run there of Fittipaldi.
And here's the big thing when it comes to super speedway racing, on iRacing in particular. The more teammates you have, the more helpful it is, because you can coordinate the strategies in turn, Jake, but also find ways to hook up and run where you want to run. You all want to be at the front? You can be at the front if you can position yourself, or you can be Alexander Russell and cut people's front noses off.
God, he apologises over the radio for it because that was a little dicey and that was a big power play. He knew he wanted to get to the front. He didn't want to stay behind the train, and now he suddenly bottoms out. You kind of need a couple people to jump up when you're up against 3 drivers at the front who control it. I think back to the majors when it was a case of Tim Kleisson's group at the front who couldn't be stopped out here. This is a really, really tough situation to be in, especially early, because if a caution comes out here, they just dominate the restarts and they effectively bully from the front.
And in turn, Russell really backing up that top line, really backing down the pace in turn. Russell does have back end damage as a result of that checkup scenario coming down the back straightaway, giving Norwich the big lead so far. Of the 28 drivers in the lead pack separated by about 2 seconds, the other grouping is now 8 seconds back for reference in this one. And I'm curious, though, with how some of the drivers will charge ahead, Christian, because if you know how to drive these cars, you may see drivers say, oh, that big opening in the middle seems so enticing, I'm going to floor it. And I've seen people pass 5-6 cars from it.
Yeah,
down the straight.
You need to have momentum before you start that off, though. And right now we can sort of see the effect of team play going on. Obviously, those 3 cars got to the front of the bottom line. And the bottom line is now really, really strung out. And we've already got some drivers trying to just actually get out of that top line. Somebody's almost on the verge of getting stuck in the middle there. They've been allowed back into the top. But, you know, that's kind of just a thing with super speedway racing, that you can choose to leave people out. You can kind of make the decision you're going to ride for a bit of the race, as we see a lot of drivers actually look like they've made that decision now, especially now we've kind of got groups formed up with teams. But teams is super important, especially this year, with how much you can work together with, say, 3 or 4 cars. You can decide what's going to happen with the race. You can decide on which lane's going to go, which isn't. I mean, we saw the top line was really moving, and now it's gone completely to the bottom. Now those 3 team cars have got to the lead.
Now Josh Wolf has now just pulled his car off the racetrack. He was among the 3 who had started from the pit lane, and in turn has lost that respective grouping. 3 wide at the back of the pack, meanwhile, because one driver who did not make friends in practice today and spent 25 of the final 35 minutes of the session speaking to drivers and arguing with them was Sean Campbell. He's been taken 3 wide and shuffled to the back of the pack.
Naturally, if you don't make friends, you're going to make enemies, and you're going backwards in this sort of race. It really is starting to form out there at the back into single file, and you're effectively just trying to run full pace to hang on to it. And ultimately, this could be really, really important. I had a look at that high line a couple laps ago. It was absolutely charging until moving up to the top, stealing it away was Faccia Ponti. He wants to be the leader of that high line run as he goes through. And now all of a sudden, you look at the drivers behind him, the likes of Mark Redford. He's going to have to do some pushing if he wants to get that train up top. And I think somebody's going to have to come up underneath when Faccia Ponti ultimately wants that high line to be the dominant line in this race.
Very committed, it seems, that 150 machine with that paint scheme today, especially with the blue cars. A bit of a side trap wiggle. Not close enough there. They do have lap traffic to fair out soon because 2 cars are up the track, and those are David H. Baker, Ross Banfield. These leaders will be reaching within the next 2 laps, if not 3. And there's a phrase, sometimes it's important to know your place as lap traffic. That's going to be critical for these leaders to know where these cars will run, or the lap cars can turn each other in front of the leaders. Caution is out. This could be trouble. The leaders charge. Big one in the heart of the pack.
That was always going to be the worry when lap cars have a spin. You need a lot of coordination when there's an issue there, and with the way everyone was funneling down, somebody was going to come a cropper, and a big one happens then at Daytona, lap 16 of 200, and effectively we can wait, just like Daytona last year, for example, except this time it wasn't rain.
Wow. I'm not sure what to say.
That was really disappointing. I think is the best way I could describe that. We had such a good pack going, and you know, to have kind of, I mean, I understand this. They're trying to not get lapped again and whatnot, but it's unnecessarily aggressive so early in the race and right in front of the lead pack.
15, 20 plus cars. And then you have a guy trying to reverse around the track a second week and nearly taking another one out.
You never know what you get with majors sometimes. You can see here, 777 trying to get in, stay as close as possible, and just hooks the rear effective quarter panel, and just like that, right in front of the leaders. You've got to be so alert. I believe that's Vavrovsky there, who clatters into the 777, and then it's a chain reaction as everyone goes around. You can see the 27 so late into the safer barriers. They're down on the inside of the circuit, and just a very, very awkward incident. You can see they all go up, and effectively that will be a lot of dramas. Everyone coming into the pits. Good news though, they have the fast repair, and this is the sort of reason why you have it.
You don't expect to have to use it, though, on lap 17 in the heart of the pack. This is the worst-case scenario. Seeing a car spinning, and then seeing a car moon-launched into the sky.
Oh, did everything right,
wow.
But just gets contact late from two cars going through the same gap. Christian, I'm sure you've been in many situations like this, and sort of the understanding that how do you avoid everybody in a wreck? Is it just like a gamble that you've just got to pick your lane and hope nobody's going to go for the same piece of real estate?
Yeah, for the most part it is. My feeling was always, you get some drivers who are really conscious about being ran over from behind, whereas my feeling on that was always, I'll do what I can see, and it's on whoever's behind me to not run me over. And, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but at least then you're focused only on what's going on ahead. So I would just try and pick where I thought cars weren't going to be by the time I got there. And, you know, it's pretty awkward, especially when you're with too wide at Daytona and in the corner, which actually makes it much, much more difficult. And I think that's why we saw so many cars involved in that. If that had been on the straightaway, you would have been able to move the car around quite a lot more. But, you know, if you're on the bottom, where do you go? If you try and pull the car into the apron, you've got much, much less grip all of a sudden, and you pretty much can't dictate the direction at that point, and we saw that happening there. So, you know, pretty much a worst case scenario as to where you could have had a wreck there. And some drivers, there's just no way you could have avoided it. I mean, you saw Russell there. He did a really good job actually trying to get through it, and then just at the end just got cleaned out.
One driver you may notice here did stay out this caution, by the way, about halfway to the fuel run. This is one of the Apex Tech cars, and Chalet, who elects to stay out in the 7. Everybody else took at minimum 2 tires and fuel and/or fuel only. First drivers on 4 are those with damage repairs done. About 19 seconds for Handsome Pete in 17th, 38 seconds for Barrett, who was up front early in 23rd now. Some did not take fast repairs this caution, like Brandon Rain, Alexander Russell, who were on board with Walker. Hendrik Beeler also electing to keep the fast repair. Haycox picked up a meatball from getting launched into the moon. Great start! As we come to lap 19, Christian, how can we top that?
Well, I think everybody's going to be much more careful from this point onwards. Obviously, a lot of drivers are going to have had to use the fast repair there. You know, you can maintain pace with a bit better with a damaged car, like I mentioned in pre-race, but that, you know, that's not great. That's going to take some speed out of the pack if we do have drivers in here who haven't taken the fast repair and do have damage. So I suspect that we'll probably see the pack get split up a bit more now. You know, we had that second pack already, but I think we might even start to see 2 or 3, maybe even 4 packs forming up with various states of damage and whatnot.
The 265 I'm seeing of note, 10th spot was at the very back of the field. He did not take repairs during the caution flag. He picked up positions in turn. I believe he may have missed his stall, though. So we'll see how that works out. So 2 without fuel take in this window. Green flag is out. And the bottom line is caught sleeping. No one is on the bumper of the 7. And now another missed the shift. One driver missed the shift in the heart of the pack. It's Holman in the 71 who checks up the back of the pack.
God, and how everyone's managed to get around, I have no idea. The key there was that everyone just had to scamper around. It's completely neutralized the outside line. There's only 3 inside the top 10 who have managed to get there. Thatcher Ponte still making that charge, but Schlere's done well off of this restart, especially on the older tyres. He'll be okay off of this one get-go, but the question's going to be how much work is he going to use at the front? We talk about this at Daytona. Track position is key, and the work's going to be on what you can do. Keep an eye out, fourth in the train, the 323 of Gabriel Roos. Looks like he could be quite strong here in this second green flag running.
Roos up now, 12 plus spots coming to the stripe that time by as a result of some of the trouble. You got Freitas, we've seen, for example, of 20 spots as a result of some of the trouble. Navarro, who started the tail end of the field, 23 spots. Hearing a few drivers concerned with some of the temperatures in the high line currently, Redford amongst them, who is in 7th on track.
You got to be careful with pushing, especially if you're that second car in line. There is a bit of a technique to kind of keeping the car cool. What I was doing was I was really pushing them down the straights, and then I would snap out of the throttle right at corner exit, entry, sorry. So they would pull about a car length on me. That would allow me to cool down a bit, and then on the next straightaway I could get back to pushing them again. But it's not super easy to do, and the third car in line helps if it's a teammate, because they know that that's what you're doing. But as you can see, it does become a factor, those temperatures and keeping the engine cool when you're trying to make any line go, really. It doesn't matter whether it's the top or the bottom. That's one of the key factors in what makes the lines kind of move forwards and backwards, is keeping the second car cool and having a good third and fourth car to sort of push everybody forwards when that second car can't.
Here's the pump draft you're referring to a bit there with Redford. In fact, and here's the interesting thing I'm noting a little bit with this track today. I want to go back to you and Christian on this.
Oh, someone's on the wall.
Some trouble in the back.
Pack. I'm not sure who it was. It was the white machine, and they're going to turn in the front. We're going to get a caution.
Caution is not out yet. One car flipping to the flag stand.
Ow!
Somehow we are not under caution, Christian, from that. Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely surprising. I can only assume the reason why the yellow didn't come out there is because whilst he was kind of doing a bit of a 360, he was pointing straight pretty quickly after that.
In the heart of the pack. Wow. No caution, we stay green, and now we have 10 modifieds on track. The minimum speed, remember, about 53 seconds. There's going to be concerns after that one of that, as the 7 continues to lead the pack. It's down to 16 in the lead group from that.
Well, we talk about in terms of college basketball and the Sweet 16, well, at the front, they're going to be very happy that that stayed green, because they can continue to build that gap and continue to go forward. And what is so striking about this front group is that the high line is doing absolutely nothing. 4 on the high line and everybody else on the bottom. And effectively, the strength of that line is going to be huge in terms of how you get through. The one thing that high line I don't think is doing as much is catching enough of the side draft. They're not really grabbing too much to give them that slingshot around. It's a very difficult skill to do, and you need a lot of control with it. There's no reason for them to be as aggressive right now, because we're lap 23 of 200. We're still just over a tenth of the way through the race. So what they've got to be alert to, though, is where they are in track position, that they don't get caught out on the wrong side of things. And ultimately, the one thing they need to do is make sure when it comes to about lap 170, 180, that they're getting themselves into position to use the side draft on the high line.
Let's get a chance to take a look at what happened, what you're referring to, by the way, Jake, that happened in the heart of that group, the second pack. And wow.
Yeah, that's the big wow from Julien Gion there, who actually was riding up against the barriers, somehow was able to get through. It was all about Thortolo, who had checked up massively, had dropped back 4, 5, 6. There was a little pack there in the middle that started to go 2, 3 wide. Someone got turned up over someone else. And then effectively, that brought the huge spin. I thought for sure that would guarantee a caution. You never see a turn in the pack end up with everyone unscathed. And suddenly, almost everyone ended up unscathed.
By the way, that car we've seen did take the faster pair during green moments ago. The 54 now has a fresh car, but has to keep it fresh for another 175 laps. One of the others involved in that one, the 077, has parked it, joining Joshua Wolf at the ice cream stand of the DNF list. But here's the interesting mark of what we may see for pit stop soon, Christian. If this goes green, the gamble by the 7 might not be the greatest right now. But here's the other thing. Different brakes, different brake markers, much more difficult to slow it down compared to the Gen 6 car.
Yeah, obviously, if you're the only guy out there who stayed out, then that's a pretty big problem because you're going to be pitting on your own, and that's a massive time loss, especially getting back up to speed because you got no help in accelerating and whatnot. Yeah, in terms of braking, it is different compared to the Gen 6, and there's a little bit more options, I would say, to configure. You can adjust your master cylinders now on the next gen where you can on the Gen 6, so you know you can either make the pedal kind of really snappy in the sense of it'll lock up with very minimal input, or you can make it so that you can absolutely hammer the brake pedal when coming down onto the flat, but you'll have a little bit less kind of fidelity at low speed, and you know that caught me out in the duel. What I wanted was to be able to pull off the banking and hammer the pedal to 100% without locking up and have like no risk of it at all. That was great. That worked awesome. The problem I ran into is then when I got to the pit box, I didn't press the pedal hard enough, so I just went straight through the pit box and about 2 stalls down. So yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off, but you know there's some preference options. The big thing though is always that kind of kink away from the racetrack into pit road. Obviously, drivers are used to it a bit with the Daytona 24, where it's pretty much trivial. But in a stock car, we often see drivers, they'll get it slowed down kind of marginally on the flat, but then they don't make the turn and they end up in the grass. So you've got to be really careful of that.
Calamity Corner may be very much reignited this season, in real life and virtual, to say the least, in pit entry. Just looking at what you're referring to as well, if you have the sim, you can look at your garage and see a front MC and rear MC. It's like looking at trigonometry, is what I will say right now. So it will take time for people to learn exactly that. Still though, technical issues you see for the 016, the fastest in practice. They continue to run though in the heart of the pack regardless. 16 are in this respective grouping currently, the next pack 9 seconds behind.
And all of the work that was done and all of the battling has meant that the group has fallen back, and it's very much a single file chase with Scott Brazier and Dallas Pataska there in that group going forward. But you look at this at the front, it is still Theo Schleray. Now, here's going to be the interesting thing. If this stays green for a long time, we've got smaller packs here, which means we're less likely to see incidents occurring. Schleray at the front of the field, diving for the pit, could be one very awkward situation and a half, because he'll have to coordinate the entirety of the bottom line to move up.
See some of that shuffling back to the bottom. In fact, some of the drivers starting to think big picture. Second pack just had some carnage because the 90 just doored the 31. Tool getting into that contact in pack 2 for reference. You see them side by side. One car just hooked into this grouping too. And I'm curious on the strategy here, Christian. Ryan Walker, someone we do work with here at GSRC, for full reference, ran 170 miles per hour for a few laps before finally picking up the pace to 190 for this group. That was after getting lapped by the lead pack and dropping 9 seconds behind it.
Yeah, and obviously a big difference in terms of running single car or in a pack. And we've talked a little bit about the kind of the change to the 5-speed box. And yeah, you can forget that there's a 5th. Like, it's totally possible to do that. So it wouldn't surprise me, actually, if we've got a couple of drivers out there maybe running around in 4th right now.
Found it interesting that, started to note that, he immediately picked up 20 miles an hour. So we'll see if that lesson has been learned for the rest of the day. As you see, the second pack is deciding to race side by side here. Keep in mind, they're running 47 threes. With the way they're racing, the lead pack is hitting 46.8s, Jake.
Second the lap, and it shows. It's about coordination. You put more people in a group, you are going to go faster, because that strength of slipstream runs all the way through. And it's not just slipstream for the cars behind, it's slipstream for the car in front, who's able to get a much better punch through the air. You're seeing it right now here, this second group that you can see, it's a group of 5 cars. Now, 5 cars against 16 is always going to be a lot more difficult to reach those same sorts of levels. They're going to be down a couple miles an hour, and off into the pits goes Michele Sangali right in front of the leaders. So they've just had a little bit of a look. But ultimately, I think this group is going to struggle. They're going to drop that time, and effectively, it's Murphy's Law. You can do everything right, but the moment you lose the draft, the race is pretty much hope for a caution.
Technically, the pack should be worth Brunoni is now third grouping. Here is Zengali you're referring to in the pit lane after a 5-second stop. So our faster pair possibly being used by that machine 14 laps into the run. The reason I say there is technically third grouping we've seen is there is a big group of 17th to 27th also up the track now. From that perspective, pack we're watching who are still running that half a second off. They're being led by Hashimi this time, who showed some great pace last time out, Christian. As one driver in this group is getting freight train, no friends for the 111 and Brandon Ring.
Yeah, and it's a little bit odd actually that we're seeing drivers kind of fight in the second pack, because that's just really going to slow you down. The big thing here is that you should be all trying to work together and getting everybody sort of pushing the line as well as they can. That includes the drivers at the back of the back of the line here, and you can see they're
trouble for the leaders. The lap cars are not going to the wall. Ross Banfield is elected to stay up to the yellow line. Russell is on the top. They're having to go snaking their way by the traffic, and now they're getting side-drafted by the 777. Wrecking with Russell, 3 wide down into Calamity Corner. No caution yet as they crash in the pit entry. The yellow cone becomes a casual cause, and Thomas Cope spins into the grass. The 64 may bring out the caution as he parks it in the middle of the second pack. Not out yet. Still no caution. Now it is as the pack says hello to him.
Yeah, that was a chain reaction that was completely avoidable. As traffic go high, you're effectively deciding to put a tractor down there on the low line. The issue that you have then is you've got Russell, you've got Geisler who was there, and you've got Mario Schroer who are all in that group. And effectively, 3 into 2, they merge because there's nothing you can do. You get spooked as a driver when you get something against the norm. The one thing you cannot afford is that to happen. And effectively, 3 into 2, they run into each other. And this is a long chain reaction accident.
Just absolutely incredible. And what did I say about knowing your place, being predictable, etc. as lap traffic? They were asked in the rule book, Christian, if you are being lapped, please stay high for the leaders to pass you low.
Yeah, it's kind of, again, it's like what we saw with the first major incident, that it's not really necessary to be happening, especially so early on in the race. There's a lot of time to get a lap back if you've lost one. We don't need things like that going on.
See, Russell got the rule. He is a well-known oval racer on the platform, who has worked with some big technical alliances like Elliott Sauer Esports. Banfield's more the roadside. You see the 3 wide that builds up in turn, though, as some of the drivers decide to try and pass quickly as Russell got a bit of side draft in. Then Cope cuts the grass and then spins it.
Well, here's the thing. There's a big difference between being a road driver and an oval driver. If you're an oval driver, you know the understanding of the oval rules, which is I go up to the top and I make sure I'm staying out of the way of everybody else. If you're a road driver and the understanding of when you're driving road here at Daytona and iRacing, the rule is I'm going to stay on my line, because if I'm staying on my line, it is the duty of the cars around me to get by me safely as per the iRacing Sporting Code. Now we've got a second caution here, and I'm pretty sure everyone who didn't pit is now pitting, and everyone who has pitted is going to go for that top up.
Every car is pitting on the lead lap. This caution flag has to be expected. Everyone back on the fuel marks. Some drivers did miss their pit boxes like the 90 Atul. Everybody else in for service. 2 tires and fuel, the name of the game for most. Russell Muscles with the faster pair. And the 555 of Scott Brazier, who was in the second pack, may get an ended longest line penalty. Just had an unsafe pit exit. There was also speeding for the 265 on entry into the pit lane. So a lot happening at Daytona, Christian. 2 cautions. 2 with lap cards being the triggers, unfortunately, to so far in this one.
Yeah, and pit road was quite interesting there, because obviously we have a lot of cars anyway, but because we had that second pack that was a bit further back, it didn't look like everybody was really bunched up coming onto pit road. So you had some cars leaving the box as others were coming in, and yeah, that's that's always kind of a bit tricky to deal with. You can't really see that well, especially when you're in the box. So you just kind of got to hope that somebody isn't going to be there when you pull out. And it's, yeah, we had a couple of crossovers, and I think that's why a couple of drivers might have missed that box, because they were about to turn in and they had somebody coming out of their pit box near theirs, and that kind of got in the way. But one of the good things about this caution is that it is going to give a chance to that second pack, because that second pack was dropping off. I was a little bit surprised. They've got a lot of team cars in there. They should have really been able to form up and really kind of catch back up. Though there wasn't much fighting going on in the lead group, so that always makes it more difficult. I think if it was towards the end of the race and there was more too wide going on in the lead group, we would have seen that second pack catch up a bit more easily. But it was still a bit surprising to see so many team cars not able to move that pack forwards. But they've all got another chance at it now.
So one to green this time by, as it is a 1-2 field in control of Grizzly TFR cars, under which overly excited on the radio as a result here, with Travis Henderson the race leader after pit stops. Gabriel Ruse is in third, representing Brandon Sea Stars and Satellite Racing today. Faccio Ponti is in fourth. He's been a contender all race. Cologne, Freitas, the top six. Redford, who's been a strong pusher, in seventh. Campbell, who has been bounced around like a pinball ball, is in eighth. Holman, who missed a gear in the last start, is in ninth. Handsome Pete, who we haven't talked much about and was a championship contender last year, is in 10th. Intriguing to see the comers and goers here with who's been able to stay out of the trouble, Jake.
And the first thing that you need to understand is that second group did quite a good job of staying out of trouble. They managed to just get themselves quietly into positions, and you're going to see drivers moving up and down the order as this goes on. I'm looking at the field here. Only 3 drivers who started inside the top 10 are at current in the top 10 right now, and it really goes to show you have the ability to move in a race like this. There aren't guarantees. Lights off on the safety car. We're going green as the pace car should dive in.
Of note, you may see the 265 peel off. Quite another black flag, but the green flag is out. We're racing regardless. With 163 laps to go in the Great American Race for the Major Series European Pro region. As expected, Grizzly TFR controls the front grouping to the bottom. Most of the field wants to get to the bottom to start this run.
I'm just listening there over the radio. Faccio Ponti getting into the radio with Cordell Cologne, saying got a little bit of damage on the car. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. And so there's just that little bit of communication here. And that's going to be key as well, because he's fourth in the train. There's only one car in front that's really a challenger by that measure of metric. And you'd probably say here at this point in time right now, Justin, that, you know, if you're third in the group of your team, you've got one role. You're the rear gunner. If someone goes high, you follow them. If someone stays low, you stay there.
And keep in mind, Christian, and you know this well, if you have damage in a star car at a super speedway, it kind of makes people not want to be your friend at that time and want to pass you, regardless of how quick you may be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a thing. I mean, you know, even if the damage is marginal, like if it's just scrapes or whatever, if it's visible, it's always a hard time getting anybody to work with you. It can pretty much mean that you're not going to be able to get someone to push you to win the race. Almost certainly it means that. But you can still be a very effective pusher when you've got damage. So that's why you try and, well, you kind of see people all jumping out in front of each other as we see the second line is actually looking like it's formed up pretty good now.
And it's all the Apex Tech cars, too, wanting to work together on the second line. They're really picking up speed down the straights. 196 into turn 1 this time at the head of the group for Jamie Conway. Quickest we've seen down the straightaways today, by the way, so far. So this line, keep in mind the trends over the years. The top line quicker down the straights on iRacing. In the corners, the bottom line is usually the quicker way around, obviously the shortest distance. That's been really helping out this top group to the point where the 2 others have jumped up and joined suit.
And crucially, they're part of their own team as well. You can sort of see
look at
it
that.
here as they try and make that push. You got Hashimi there, and on top of that, they are just trying everything to put themselves in. Scott Brazier wants to get into the mix, but you're now starting to figure out, okay, where do you want to be? And these laps getting faster and faster into one. It starts to become 5 up there because stealing away to the top again and pretty much neutering the run again. Guess who? Adam Fatcher-Ponte's been doing that all race long. When he sees that the high line is starting to form, he jumps up to the top and wants to be the spearhead.
And as a result, what was 7 cars down the front straightaway is back down to 5 for the back straightaway. Seems all the teammates electing to still give Fatcher-Ponte a chance here in the 150. Keep in mind, he does have some scrapes on the front nose as a result of the first caution flag of the race, which may be a bit of a factor here. They are about 3 miles per hour slower down the straightaway compared to when it was the pink number 42 numbers. As here's the 777. He is still on the bottom of the racetrack.
Yeah, I'm
I'd
not
say
really
this is
sure.
scary, Christian. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I feel like if the first 2 wrecks weren't a good enough sign to show you that that's a bad idea, I'm not really sure what's going to get the message across right here.
He's nearly gotten. He's nearly turned 2 cars here. He's bumped one more.
Yeah,
He's
I
closed
got
another.
one.
Caution flag is out. More cars on the catch fence. And Ross Banfield's day may be done as some cars meet him down in the Calamity Corner.
Wow, that's not ideal in the slightest, and I would say completely avoidable with the way that this goes. But I would say that the one issue that you have is if you lap traffic, you've got to filter to the back of the pack. Doesn't matter if you're on the bottom, doesn't matter if you're on the top, you have to filter back. Because the lap traffic had picked back up the draft of the leading group that had already made its way around, it was actually gaining back on some of the cars on the outside, and that's why the accident happens, because that was pushing 3 wide.
Once again, the rule, you have to stay up top if you're lapped cars. Banfield, for a second caution in a row, has elected to stay at the bottom. This time, he has gotten into contact. He is claiming he lost his relative to not know there was the pack coming in his mirror.
I mean, that might be true and all, but it's still, you know, it's almost a carbon copy of what we saw before. And you would think that if you'd had that happen to you once, you would be very, very mindful of not having that happen again. Like, to me, this was just completely unnecessary. I don't really understand what the end goal of any of this was.
Just about the entire grouping for Apex Tech involved. Several of the Grizzly TFR cars trying to dodge getting involved late. 3rd caution of the day. 13th on back. 14th on back, should say, pitting this caution. Take one more look, full speed. Take a listen.
Did everything right. The issue was that the car had to come up and avoid cars on the bottom, and that's why you get such a heavy and helter-skelter style accident like that was. That was pretty much a passenger ride, and the last thing you want to be dealing with.
So an incredibly big incident there. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, more action from Daytona approaching a quarter of the way through. This is the Major Series European Pro Split, Daytona 500.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics and engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to Daytona. After 3 caution flags caused by lap traffic, it's Malnerwich and Henderson in control of the field, approaching lap 46. Justin Prince, Jake Sperry, Christian Chowder with you in what has been an intriguing lesson on how to drive around Daytona in a super speedway package. The green flag is out. We're back underway, approaching a quarter of the way through the distance.
Oh, this is a good start by Gabriel Roos in the 3-2-3. The one thing you have to be is alert. You've got to coordinate the restarts if you're a team. Roos was absolutely on it, was 4th back there, and has managed, or 3rd back there, I should say, has made sure he's jumped up into 2nd, and he's done absolutely everything correctly with that high line just completely faltering on that run going forward.
Few of the drivers involved in the caution were able to keep some of their track position with faster pairs. Jamie Conway amongst them, who was turned towards the catch fence. Chalet also amongst those. Most of the others, though, have had to drop to the very tail end of the pack. And that respective pack has already dropped 1 second as a result of Beeler not taking a faster pair from the early caution flags. So some of the drivers as well are having to come in to serve penalties here, such as Dallas Pataska, tied for the championship lead.
Yeah, this is not ideal, obviously having to take a penalty and already with a damaged car. I imagine he's still got the faster pair in reserve, but you know, there's a lot of cars now that are not on the lead lap, so you've got to be really, really careful if you're going to give up a lap, because you're going to need a lot of cautions to get it back if you end up, say, falling to the tail end. At the moment, we've got 4 cars 1 lap down, and then another 3 cars 2 laps down.
I believe the penalty may have been from David H. Baker trying to let cars go, and Pataska could not get timed up right to be able to properly pass by Baker, who was letting the cars go. Got a passing before the green flag, and Pataska had to serve a 29-second penalty. In turn, by the way, Chris Barrett is leading the 2nd pack, so the Apex team cars looking very sporty when they can figure out their way as the head of the packs.
They certainly are. Chris Barrett, of course, drove fantastically in the first round at Watkins Glen. Really showed what he was capable of doing. But ultimately, this 2nd pack has got a lot of work to do to get back up there. I think they are once again, though, relying on another caution to bring themselves back into play. Still a long way to go, but I'm keeping an eye out on Thomas Cope at the moment, who's trying to push the high line in the top pack, and he's certainly doing a really good job. And now that pack's starting to mobilize. You've got 6 up in there, not fully organized as of yet, and crucially, they have dispatched the Thatcher Ponte down there on the bottom line, so they don't have to worry about someone riding up and stealing away that group.
By the way, some of the drivers involved in some of the earlier wrecks with the lap traffic, Thomas Cope is in 6th right now down the backstretch, and he is nearly getting bumped away. This is not an easy task, mind you, to bump draft, even with these cars. If you don't get it square, Jake and Christian, you bobble around.
Yeah, very easy to kind of just get him at the wrong angle. You've got to make sure that you're square to their bumper, or if you're not going to be square to the bumper, you should kind of be offset a bit to the right. Where you really don't want to be is on the left rear. And you know, if you give them a really big push and it kind of shoots them out there, it'll also probably move them across the track a little bit. So you got to be careful when you get back to them that you're still sort of centered with them. I don't really like to push at all through the corners. You can do it, and I think towards the end of the race, you know, the risk is probably worth it. But right now, I would be only pushing on the straights. But to be honest, I'm surprised that we've even got 2 lines going at all. We're 50 laps in, we've had 3 major wrecks, we've got a lot of damaged cars out there, and yet it seems like everybody still wants to race. Nobody out here really looks like they're just content to ride. Everybody looks like they want to race, and you know, it's cool to see. It's just a little bit surprising to see, I would say.
Well, it is a race.
Don't worry, I will add to that point as well, Justin. Imagine like you're going along the freeway or the motorway with a trailer on the back, and you just get a little bit of a wiggle on with that trailer. Where that sort of effort is placed on that trailer depends how much the car is going to wiggle around and how you go through. It's the same with a bump draft. Where you get bumped on the back of the car depends how much you're actually going to wiggle out there on the straight. And if you're alert to it, you can be okay. But the further along the bumper you start pushing, the more likely you're going to spin it.
Great point indeed as they continue to try and fight about on the top groove. Mostly clean track for this run, just past a quarter of the way through. 51 laps now complete. Henderson the race leader, 15 led laps so far, make it 16 now. So far the other leaders, Monerwich, Facciaponti, Charlet, who led 18 laps, 3 for Alexander Russell after starting outside front row. And even though they're running 2x2, it seems like things have calmed down here. Not to jinx it, Christian. It's gonna be interesting to see how drivers in turn try and plan things out, especially if we get green flag runs long enough to stay green.
Yeah, and I think at this point, if it does kind of get to the point where we get a green flag pit stop, then it's really a team game at that point. Some teams are still actually grouped up fairly well, I would say. TFR guys are obviously got a pretty nice group in here. The satellite guys are completely all broken apart, so it's going to be difficult for them to do anything. And Apex Tech, well, they were looking really good until we had that last caution. You know, they had the top line going. It got a little bit kind of fizzled out when Facciaponti went up there to block it. I think in that move, I probably would have just put him in the middle and gone around him as a group. But you know, like, it's unfortunate for those guys because they did have a pretty good strategy going, and we were going to have at least 2 strong teams who were going to probably do some slightly different strategy plays at the very front of the field. And now, I would say the TFR guys have got a pretty big advantage, especially when it comes to making a pit stop and kind of maybe even making a breakaway.
Especially since they've had a long history the past few years, in fact, since they have had the numbers to be able to control the race lead and come away with some major victories. Past few years, in fact, the Daytona 500 for the European Pro Split, the organization has been the one that usually has taken the checker flag with the strength by numbers. And that's the interesting thing too, Christian. That's kind of a different mindset for some compared to others. In real-world action, keep in mind, the manufacturers reportedly have had those types of discussions in the past where you have those thought processes of, do you want the straight by numbers? Can we work together with certain groups? All those thoughts are worked out, manufacturer-wise, team-wise, driver-wise even.
Yeah, I would say at a minimum, you kind of really need 4 cars to get anything going well. But if you can get 4, it's also kind of enough. You know, when you start mixing more in, it becomes more and more difficult. Especially if you're kind of trying to all push in a line and get everybody clear of a line before you all switch lines and stuff like that. There is advantages to obviously having a lot of cars. I would say the biggest advantage though is having more cars is actually in the pre-race where you can test out a lot more things. Obviously if you can get 10 cars on track, you're going to learn quite a bit more about kind of getting multiple lanes going than you are if you can only get, say, 4 or 5 cars out there. So that's where the big advantage comes in for me, is in the pre-race and whatnot. But you know, it is not really a thing on iRacing, I would say. We don't really have the manufacturer side of it. obviously some teams will, kind of try and all be in the same manufacturer so it looks consistent. But while we don't have that, we do obviously have the ability for teams to field large number of cars in events like this and kind of have the same sort of effect, just with a different view. Instead of it being manufacturers, it's just team cars.
Technical Alliance cars, if you go towards that extent too. As clapping the apron bit there, Gabriel Ruse, who is still in second amongst all this. And keeping with that thought process too, keep in mind the next few weeks are critical for eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers and their alliances and teams, because guess what? They're also learning these cars too, right? And two of the drivers are actually racing against you, Christian, in the Americas later this evening. Nick Ottinger, the pole sitter, Blake Reynolds, heart of the pack, are taking the chance to learn as Thomas Cope learns how to take the race lead down the back.
Yeah, and I would say that I always found that the Majors race was quite helpful. It tended to be always before the Coke Series race. So I was able to kind of put a few ideas into practice in this race that I could then transfer through to that. It was always a good opportunity to get a clear idea on even basic things like ride heights and whatnot, because you always want to push the cars as low as possible to get minimum drag, both front and rear. Except that one time where I didn't, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, sure, let's not talk about the monster truck.
We won't talk about that one time where I didn't do that, but yeah, normally it's all about just making sure that you're not dragging the track when you're in a pack, because the speed is higher, so you've also got a bit more load, and you do want to run it very, very marginal, but it caught me out a couple of times, especially even in that transition where you go from day to night. Sometimes that's enough with the pack speed picking up just enough towards the end of the race, where you'll go from being okay with ride heights to suddenly it's a problem. So yeah, this is kind of why we see those drivers coming into this league, and it looks like Cope has kind of got everybody on the bottom line now.
Apologies for that as we take random looks at our producer's race car in the middle of the infield. Producers like to race too, by the way. As they continue to scrap about here amongst all this, still up towards the very front, here's the onboard with Cope. And here's the interesting mark, Jake. Of the drivers up towards the front, there are 3 who pit last caution who can go further right now. The 011, the 21, and this 555 all pit under the last caution are the only drivers who did so in this late pack still.
And funnily enough, the 011 and the 21 are second and third right now. Maximilian Senna-Muller and Pete Harrod are there in second and third. So they've got a really good opportunity right now just to control things here on this bottom line. It was so telling that they did what they couldn't do in the early stage of the race, which Thatcher Ponte didn't want to do too much, is that they got the gap over the top. And instead of just continuing to run that high line in, they decided they wanted to duck down. They wanted to control the bottom. They wanted to control the lead of the race. And that has effectively just scuppered everybody's line up on top, to the point right now where it's Brandon Ring in the 111 who's really trying to give that push and trying to get someone there. But there's only 2 out there. It's a very lonely existence now for what is, I would say, remnants of a lost civilization, the high line.
Welcome back to 2018 Gen 6 Super Speedway action. No offense, Christian. As Brandon Ring still tries to get the top line to work, I will say, here's the thing too that's partly influencing all this. Most of the drivers, it seems, have wanted to indicate they want the calm period, they want the chance for the green flag stops. Most drivers just want to get there. That's the thing. And here's the thing. Being in that line is better for the fuel save when you think about it big picture, because if you're, say, trying to lead a train of cars, it does burn more fuel, albeit with a bigger tank this year.
Yeah, it's a good point about the bigger tank. Actually, it's a little bit larger. It was 18.7 gallons on the Gen 6, and now we're up at 20. So, it's not huge, but it is enough of a difference to get a couple more laps out of the car at some tracks, especially the shorter tracks. Actually, obviously the bigger tracks, this car is a little bit more draggy than the one it replaces, so it doesn't have a kind of a huge gain in that sense. say at Daytona, but it does at the smaller tracks where the drag is less of a factor.
So those drivers still try and dart about a little bit. The Saudi 3 having a bit of a moment in turn 4. In fact, there with the side draft. Lap traffic is ahead. Don't worry this time, they're on the top line. They are super speedway drivers, mind you, with Pataska leading the group. So they are tucked away as close as they can to the wall. And that's usually what you want to see. On the iRacing service side, at least for super speedway action, will the drivers in the middle line manage that properly is the big question of the day. For the first time, the lead pack survives that management.
Oh, it was so sketchy from the 111. Thought for, I would say, the shortest of moments out there, trying to sneak a little bit of that draft away from the top, and then effectively moving to the middle was a little bit squirrely there on the road. You can see effectively the work being done by Thomas Cope. It's an absolutely fantastic bit of momentum out there on the front, and I think he knows better than anybody else. He wants to control the race right now in the Olympus esports machine, and it's been a very, very strong start to this sort of race. You can't really argue with how the top of the field have deserved to be there, and the crucial thing is everybody in the top 5 started outside of the top 15 at this point.
The next car that was set to be lapped, Miguel Freitas has just parked it by going into the infield and then towing. Yes, you heard that right. And our driver in Hashimi has blown their motor on the apron, believe, if not running at 70 miles per hour to let the cars go. Everybody else keeping things clean. We're about nearly 3/4 of the fuel run through for our first green flag stops. Here's a look at Hashimi as he continues to explore the confines of the apron with this modifying today.
An extreme version of a modified, I would say.
I find it so interesting how the damage in turn reacts in the next gen compared to the Gen 6, because early on with the pro drivers from the real world, with the invitationals got to get a hand on it, they can make modifies. Near we went at Darlington. Not so much now.
Yeah, obviously with it kind of being a new car, there is sort of continual improvements both on a physics and an art side with regards to things like that. So
yeah.
I think going forwards you'll probably see less competitive modifieds is what I would say.
I'm curious to see if someone does make it so that a car somehow is modified and is actually quicker. I think everyone would scream.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to see that, if I'm honest, JP. I think that would that probably goes in amongst the kind of things that give me nightmares at night. So I don't want to see that.
Apologies for your nightmare this evening then, as we see things settle at about. Keep in mind, 17th is still 6 seconds back. They have matched the lap times now, this lead group, by the way. Problem is, Joe, Jake, if you are matching the lap times, you are not closing in on these cars. A 4, make it 5-car train is what we're referring to, 17th. On the pylon, you may notice the 024 is working with Beeler, who has damage. Reniers, who is a fast modified, sorry for the nightmare fuel. You have a lap car in the 265 who has served black flag several times. You have Alexander Russell, who is currently the lucky dog car. And then you have Sangali, who took faster pairs during green at one point and is on the lead lap in 20th. These are all matching, if not a little bit quicker than race leaders at times right now.
Well, they're not playing games, and that's why they're keeping the times as they are, because this is a group of 6 cars that are not looking to try and jump up the train. They're not looking to try and make positions. They're just happy to stay as they are, work around the group, and just make sure that they are running their race to their potential. It's something that is very underrated here. More cars you can put on that bottom line, the quickest line out there on the circuit, the quicker you're going to go around this. And they're managing to hold this very fast front group up. I'm looking at it then from the point of Thomas Cope, who did a 47.3 out there on the front. You put that into Chris Barrett's perspective. Yeah, no, that's not as much this time. It was a 47.9. Yeah. So I think the back is just starting to fall out of that group, and they are starting to drop back a little bit. I tell you what, the 011's done some great work. Ponti back in the lead on the top line, but Maximilian Seller-Muller is the reason why Thomas Cope is leading this race right now.
especially with how consistently they've been working together, it seems, down that line, despite the differences on the fuel marks. As we're approaching those fuel marks, we've talked a bit about how the build of these cars massively different, especially with the ride heights is the critical thing, because with the way the diffuser's built, the way the splitter is sealed, the way there's no side forks on these cars, with the side skirts compared to the Gen 6 car, it's massively different, especially with the sensors which have been adjusted over the past month or so too, to be able to properly set those ride heights down for this car.
Yeah, and I mean, ride heights was always a big thing on the Gen 6, but one thing you could kind of get away with a little bit more on that car, I would say, is you could get a little bit more movement out of the suspension, and you could definitely run the left rear a lot softer with the solid axle. Now with the next gen, with it being independent at the rear, you can't do that anymore. The static crossweight is more of a tuning tool than it was on the Gen 6. On the Gen 6, it was still important, but you know, you could really drive the dynamic cross with a big rear spring split. You just can't do that so much now with the next gen. You need a stiff left rear spring to kind of hold that corner up of its own accord. Otherwise, you just get pretty poor ride height control. And you know, with it being the Gen 6s were sort of pseudo underbody car by the end, you know, with kind of what teams were doing with them and whatnot. But the next gen is a true underbody car. So yeah, definitely a lot more focus on ride heights, and overall springs around the car are probably stiffer than people are used to seeing.
In turn, it's so intriguing how drivers handled that difference, because keep in mind, it took until December in the real world for the real world package to be fully locked on in. And it's so intriguing how these drivers would adapt to that. Here's the thing though, on the radio, Baciaponte wants to get down here because the pit window is within 5 to 10 laps from now. He has asked for 4 car lengths of space behind the 111 here, it seems.
No, just no. Like, if you're going to be bartering on the radio for space, you're not going to get it. That's one less car you have to worry about in the race. It is complete game theory to say, no, you put yourself up there on the top line.
Yeah.
You've got to find a way to get down safely. That's your prerogative.
Exactly. And the problem is, I don't think anybody has actually responded here. No one's given the space here for them to peel down yet.
Why should they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's totally what it comes down to. And you know, the thing is, he could actually be helping himself out a bit here. From my perspective, the play that he should be going for is he should be trying to get the 111 to push him, and then he should be side drafting a car back in that bottom lane to create a space ahead of it, with the hope of then the 111 being able to kind of push him forwards enough to then slot in. But he's not doing that. He's just sort of riding about a full car width away, so he's not really getting any of the side draft at all. And he's allowing the bottom line to just stay packed up. And, you know, the pace is not really that fast right now, but if he doesn't kind of force the issue, they're not going to let him just do it.
Drivers reporting 10 laps of fuel in their tanks currently in the lead grouping, trying to stay within sync, it appears. And Thomas Cope has already burned at least 1 extra lap of fuel, he's reporting, within the next 9, he just told his competitors. And the reason for that too, Jake, is you don't want to be surprised when coming off of turn 4, you get the call saying, I'm pitting right now, and then they peel off and then calamity strikes.
Absolutely. And if you're on the front, you're more likely to go first because you're not having the ability to lift off at any point in time, carry that same momentum while you're going around the circuit. You'll see drivers in half throttle, sometimes even quarter throttle at certain points out there on track, because they don't need to be going full throttle in comparison to those who are at the front, who are basically doing the donkey work at this point in time. Thomas Cope is effectively a donkey at this point, which is a shame for such a wonderful Pegasus that's on the side of his car. But you'd have to say at this point in time, he's going to be one of the first to dive himself down into the pit. You got Maximilian Sennemuller, who's been happily pushing him about all the while, and it's going to be down to coordination. How many are going to want to come in together? And when they do, How much are they going to be fanning out as they try and desperately go from what is 300 kilometers an hour down to about 80 as they trundle down through the pits?
I believe the term in stock car racing / the Americas is sitting duck. I've never heard someone called a donkey. That wasn't an insult, no offense.
Well, this is why this is a European split, so you get Europeanism.
150 has gotten space from Redford, by the way, his pushing buddy. But here's the interesting thing. Brandon Ring's been trying to side draft all these cars to the inside off and on. He's stuck on the top with the 73 behind. That is David Sorenzo, who is more so known for his open wheel ability in top split iRacing IndyCar Open competition, as well as his time in this series. They're electing to say, let's gain some spots first.
They're going pretty good as well up there, especially as only a 2-car pair. But, you know, that gives you a good idea of how much pace is kind of out of the bottom right now, because everybody's just content to ride. You know, there's pretty big spacing. Nobody's being aggressive with pushing.
Bit of smoke hearing up the road. Thomas Geisler is the next lap car. A bit of a scrape lead for the wall with the lap traffic in the 45 you see mean taken 3 wide. Thomas Geisler with his magical paint scheme. Going very, very high to the wall and lots of space to the point where he scrapes the safer barrier. The whole corner. On the bright side, no incident this time, as we are now expected to be within 5 laps of pit stops.
We're going to get one diving in this time here. Julien Gion in the third group's going to dive in, and Copes puts in under chat communications, I'm pitting in this lap. So within 5 laps, how about within 1 lap right now, Justin? We're in the pit window.
That's a massive difference in fuel numbers, Christian. They were saying they were within 10 laps of fuel 3 laps ago.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising, if I'm honest. I would kind of try and stretch out as long as you can get, but you know, maybe there's some other reason for them not wanting to do that. I'm not entirely sure. But this top pair is going really, really well, actually.
And it looks like Thomas Cope has found some friends with Grizzly TFR. They have elected to follow the race leader in. 4 from the main pack have elected to peel off this time. Check that 5. Chalet has also had to come on in. Others say now they can stretch it about 4 more laps. Redford amongst those coordinating. And here's the thing, a new race leader, Brandon Ring with that, has taken the point. 2 more black flags on that entry, though, with the new brakes. Cope and Henderson both sped, Christian.
Yeah, and that's just, it's very, very easy to do. We talked about it, but, you know, disastrous. Huge penalty for doing that. You're going to lose a lap.
For some of the top drivers in the field today.
God, the last thing you want, and now Ring, who did all the work to get up there, will dive in, and he's a lot more pedestrian in initial against Gabriel Roos, who just lobs him through that section of track. That's what you get for practicing your pit entry there. Gabriel Roos overtaking, coming into the pits.
Not a surprise knowing the talent level of Gabriel Roos, especially on the roadside. Able to come in very cleanly for this entry after some of his movements for this season. That now in turn moves more up to the race lead. He started 35th today, by the way, and he can go longer than Pete, along with Pete Herod, than everybody else in this lead group right now.
Some clever racing by Maximilian Senna-Muller. It has to be said, he's just been sitting comfortably in the pack. No takers this time. All of these drivers here in this group should be going as far as the tank will allow them. We've seen a couple people dive in early, and you do get that bit of anxiety when you're the first one to dive in that you've got to get it right. It's the first time that they've done green flag pit stops in this race as well, and when you do that and you get it wrong, you definitely learn. You take quite a bit off for the next time around. If you get it right, you're absolutely on the money, and I'm sure these drivers, they all dive at the same time. They're all going to be wanting to get it right the first time round.
I've known Brandon Rain had an extended pit stop after some troubles on his entry, so 30 seconds means a lost lap there. Here comes the next wave, this time by into Calamity Corner. But that caused some calamity in turn. Couple drivers going for the Sen. Redford going deep on the brakes inside. Campbell takes it 3 wide of the entry. Any speeding penalties? No, but we do have 2 crashing. Brazier tries to turn into his box. turns across Daniel Solo's car, and the Volvo, the only one taking that theme, has been demolished.
It's very easy to have that happen. That's why you've got to really practice it to know, obviously, cars are ghosted in the pit box, but they're not ghosted in the lane. So you kind of got to be mindful of that. And you know, it's difficult, obviously, if you've got a car that's right ahead of you that's going to be pulling into its box earlier than you are. If you don't know that, there's not really much you can do about it. So just an unfortunate deal. And you obviously want to stay close to cars as well, so you don't want to lose out on pit road by backing off and giving more space. But, you know, especially at a track like this, the big thing is that as long as you're close enough to be in the draft, getting up to speed at exit, you can't afford to give up some on pit road. I was never someone who was super keen to gain on pit road, because as long as you came out with friends and got hooked up pretty quickly, it didn't really matter. It was all more about not getting the penalty and not having an incident and things like that.
3 cars left from the main grouping yet to pit. Amongst those who were also able to extend this further, Chris Barrett, Hendrik Beeler, Bram Reniers, Sengali, 38 laps on the tank, including the caution flag laps. Navarro, Holman have all been in that spot. The net race leader currently of those who have pit so far, depending on how things fare with this pack, Adam Fasciaponte at the 150 in front of Sean Campbell, Mark Redford, David Soranzo. They're 10th through 13th on track, 41 seconds behind.
Very good job from them in the stops to get the jumps that they needed to. With Redford there, with Soranzo, they built the gap up to Gabriel Roos, and the 2 TFR cars are working hard to get back there. Cologne and Milnarovic are definitely trying everything they can to stay within range. It can so easily be a disaster by that metric, but they're doing a pretty good job of things at the moment, but they are up against some numbers here at this point. Chris Barrett saying that he's going to be diving into the pits then, as he will get through on this next lap. So Barrett's going to reach the end. Schroer's going to also come into the pits at some point, but crucially, it's about the 2 of Senna and Harrod, as Jamie Conway is now in the pits from 3rd.
2 left in the lead pack. Both of those drivers left to come in can go up to 5 more laps. The drivers who are in the main group of those who have pit has expanded, mind you, to include Gabriel Roos and 2 of the Grizzly TFR cars, those who are not penalized, Monerwich and Cologne. We'll see where Conway in turn cycles. Remember, had a massive gap over Chris Barrett, his teammate, on the track. Here comes some moves, though. Roos wants to jump the line, and he does not have anyone wanting to go and jump it with him.
And that's the danger of when you've kind of only got a couple of cars in a pack, and that's what's taking the energy out of making other lanes work. I mean, there is obviously the possibility of, say, 3 of these cars try and go for a move on the top. They'll probably be able to get it done, but this is what we've got to be looking out for towards the end of the race if it stays green. And, you know, the pit stops break up packs. And if we end up with, say, only 5, 6 cars in with a chance of getting that run at the end of the race, it's going to be difficult to make anything happen just because you don't really have anybody to form up with. That's when having team cars together is going to be really, really critical, because if you are, say, in a group of 5 to 6 cars, you can make that happen because you've got enough cars to try and force another lane and a bit of a move.
Yep. More black flags for speeding, by the way, this period. Chris Barrett has been penalized for speeding. An additional black flag has been given to Antonio Navarro for an unsafe pit exit, should say, for the 99 after speeding, as now the overall leaders have come on in. How will this cycle, though? Some have been able to extend further to take that overall lead on track. Sengali, that time got the lead lap by 0.000 seconds with Moore, who is still down the pit lane. Wow. As some of the lap cars starting to battle with the currently lap cars.
Well, here's the swings and roundabouts. It's a case of if you are out there longer than anyone else, it's not just a free guarantee that you're doing well. The drivers that you're around with have fresh tires. You don't. You're going to be losing time around. They're going to be quicker. They're going to be swarming around you out on the circuit. It's not as, I would say, huge as it would be, say, on a 1.5 miler. But in will come Sangali then to make a stop. But crucially, what I would say is that there is an overcut. What a save that is. Just about kept it out of trouble and got it stopped.
Still found the pit box too at the end of the pit lane, so Zingali still finds a way to take service, but that will close the window for the first green flag stops of the day. Asciaponti ready to take the overall race lead this time by back after leading 6 laps early. He'll lead this time around and reach some more traffic. Navarro's got a problem down the back straightaway though. Navarro in the 99 is doing donuts in the middle of the pavement down the backstretch apron. After 2 black flags, he has spun it after clipping the apron and nearly getting a 3rd black flag.
Yeah, that's not ideal, is it? You go out there, you have a couple issues. Oh, I'll just put my foot down, see what happens, and you just push a little bit too much. You got to feather the throttle down on that apron. You got a car that's built for banking, and on no banking, gets up high. Leaders are now going to absolutely swarm their way through, and it's lap cars versus lap cars, and I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be in that position.
Yes, indeed, Henderson trying to stay up in the top line with Cope. What's the saying? You've got the lap car lane, you've got the lead car lane. Lead car lane has more cars, lead car lane is zipping on by. Redford now up to 3rd in turn, and some of the lap cars have found friends because Travis Henderson, if he can stay here, Christian, can be the lucky dog. If he stays with this pack, he's now in the bottom group.
And he was able to slot in there quite nicely, and you know that's vital because there are now a lot of cars off the lead lap. Everybody 18th on up is on the lead lap, but you know we've really got this pack at the front of 9 cars that are really forcing the pace, and then we've got a huge number of drivers who were involved in earlier wrecks. Henderson obviously is now become the first car a lap down, and now only 17 on the lead lap. So you know it's dropping off every time. There's probably a group of about 6 or 7 that we're going to catch maybe anywhere between 10 to 15 laps from now, depending on what the pace of their secondary pack is. But you know that's always kind of the goal, if possible, with ovals, is to try and get as many cars off the lead lap as possible and just keep them trapped there. And obviously, in this case, having Henderson, who is a teammate of a bunch of other TFR cars in the top here, that'll be really helpful to get him back on the lead lap for them towards the end of the race.
You have to feel like that's one of the major discussion points in that camp, to be able to give them this quick space to come down. And when the team dynamics, that can come into play there indeed. A bit of a poke out for the 0-11, but more not electing to jump on up. Handsome Pete, though, did lose the draft from all these drivers. Team Mad Driver, despite how handsome he may be, according to his team manager, does not have anyone who is with him to make that handsomeness shine at the front.
No, it's a frustrating position if you're Pete Harrod, because you did everything right. You moved yourself up through the train. You just left it a lap too late to dive down into the pits and keep the draft in the group. So effectively, that was just not the best pit stop. He lost a little bit of time to Max Sennamuller, and ultimately now he has no opportunities. Now, what I find interesting here is the top line here is starting to work, and it's being led by a lapped car of all things. It's got Travis Henderson up at the top of it. He wants to get his lap back by pushing, but he's dragging along Gabriel Roos for the ride, along with Muller, and then the other lap car of Thomas Cope. Cope's trying to stay in with this, because if Henderson gets ahead, he gets the lucky dog. And what's crucial here is Roos, he wants the race lead here, so he's going to use the outside line. And what a fantastic 4 this is. They've got 1 car over the top. Vacciaponti still has to be alert to this here and cover it off with the run. But this, I think, is a really interesting situation. I'm surprised that the 2 TFR Grizzly cars didn't find a way to manage to move using their own teammate trying to get back the lap.
Here's the big thing. He's on the lead lap if he's able to hold on, and Roos elects to just ditch him instead. There goes that point, as Henderson in turn tries to side draft to keep the tail end of the lead lap. This may be beneficial if he can get more clear, so both can drop down and be on the lead lap, and in turn would put Cope in the lucky dog spot. Will they peel down the back stretch? They want to clear Cope as well, it appears, Christian. They didn't go.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that they're all working together as nicely with each other as they are, but you kind of saw there where there was a bit of the side drafting going on, and that's what can really slow down the pace of a pack if towards the end, where we get a lot more aggressive with the top line side drafting the bottom. If there is any sort of split packs that have fallen further back, as we see Cope has now kind of been left out, and he's not going to get the same treatment, unfortunately, it seems. But if there are secondary packs and the lead pack is too wide and aggressively side drafting, it will pull the secondary packs back towards it because it will slow down the pace so much.
Getting close with the bump draft there, Justin. I'm just looking at Cope, and Soranzo's all over him like a rash.
Yeah, they were weeble-wobbling down the back straightaway for reference in the 73, the NSH driver. Still trying to follow suit, and you can see almost trying to use a bit of the banking as a ramp almost with some of the bobbles. You can see Redford seems to think there's a chance this can work, but the problem is they are losing ground. They do not have the numbers, Christian.
Yeah, this can work, but they need to be closer together than they are. I think what Cope's doing is predominantly correct. He looks like he's trying to pull them back a little bit on the bottom. They look like they're going to get formed up quite nice off of 2 here, but you know, now there's no openings at all, and the bottom is pretty well organized, especially at the front. That's where the difficulty is going to come in. Obviously, we've got 2 drivers at the front who don't want to go lap down. Well, 1 driver actually. Obviously, Muller is the leader. So you know, there's not in that situation. There is no real incentive for Muller to kind of get back in the head of the line because he's got someone there who's not in a fight with him. They are on the tail end of the lead lap. He can sit there in second. He can save some fuel. And he can also push them and completely take any chance of the top line forming out of the game because there's not really enough cars here unless a half of this group decides to go to that top lane to pass all these guys, which I just don't think is going to happen at this point in the race.
It's a win-win. Get to be the race leader, but also get to save fuel.
Absolutely. It's the best thing that can possibly happen.
And the one time that being on bottom as a lap car is liked, I will say. Thomas Cope's still on the top, by the way. Most all this, 9 cars in the lead group. The next big pack, how far back have they dropped? How about 27 seconds? Brendan Ring is leading this group, Jake. This includes several who were involved in the crashes in the pit lane, some with the speeding, and now will also include Handsome Pete because now these cars have a chance to jump up for 10th. Expecting them driving the middle line here, there they go.
What I found so interesting here about Pete Harrod is that he was doing 47, 48 second lap times. He lost the draft and he went immediately, no, we're not going to make this happen. We are going to drop back into that second group and we're just going to gather up, refocus and try and save some fuel, get back on strategy. He's been doing on his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 laps, 50-second lap time. So that is 2 to 3 seconds slower than the leaders.
They all settle on down in turn. Ring leads the second pack. These drivers last time by 47.5s. The leaders 46.9s. So a lot of note-taking potentially being taken, we'll say, for those looking to learn for what to expect over the next couple weeks in super speedway action on the service. This being one of the major runs in open competition on the platform early on entering that week. But this is also where it's important to not lose focus, Christian. Because yes, it's a long race. Yes, it's 500 miles. Yes, it can take lengthy amounts of time. But it takes massive concentration where if you zone out, you may get freight train. If you zone out, you may wreck the whole pack. If you zone out, you may drive yourself into the safer barrier. If you zone out, you may end up going into the grass. If you zone out, you may forget to pit. There's so many scenarios.
And, you know, like, some stuff that happens is quite silly, and you look at it and you're like, well, how's that happened? But, you know, it does. I mean, we saw it even in the Daytona 24 where cars in race winning contention would run out of fuel because they were just they would either get the number wrong or they would forget to pit or what, you know. So it's pretty easy to have that happen. And, you know, you just get drawn into this idea that, okay, I'm running single file, I'll just sit here, I'll just wait. And you normalize everything that's going on to the point where any kind of change takes so long to react to it. Even things like coming down and pitting, you don't really have a good sense of just how fast you're going. I mean, I know it's obviously like we're not out here in real cars, it's like simulated cars and whatnot, but it is a thing. You know, you come down onto pit road and you don't have a good sense of speed. And it's very, very easy to obviously overshoot. So you do kind of have to find ways to stay alert, but at the same time, a situation like this where you've got a good thing going here, right? Like you got the top 9. If you're in this top 9, there's no incentive for you to push right now. You got a long way to go. We're just about at halfway. This is the point where you should kind of be trying to relax a bit and stay composed, so that, you know, you've got mental capacity and energy for the end of the race. What you don't want to end up with is you don't want to be completely wrecked with 10 to go, because that is when you make bad decisions. So it's difficult because you've got to be awake enough to be able to adapt to anything that does happen, but you've also got to pace yourself. As we see a little bit of a fight going on now in the middle. You see Passiponti's been pulled back just a bit by Cope on that top line.
And you see them still trying to sort things out a little bit here in turn. And mind you, most of the teamwork and teammates have been separated out, as we have just passed halfway though. It is Moore who is the race leader. Gabriel Roos is in second. Passiponti's in third, followed by Sean Campbell. Plus 30 from the drop of the green flag. Now with that fight with Soranzo in fifth. Manerwich is currently sixth on the bottom line, making the move for fifth. Redford's in seventh. Cologne, Conway, Ring is your top 10. After a grand total of 250 miles out of a possible 500, not including potential green-white checkers. At this point, the drivers starting to pat themselves on the back for the runs they've been able to perform here, will say. This being the longest green flag run of the race, and Thomas Cope now losing his friends, as they're going 3 wide and side drafting each other at the back of the grouping here.
Well,
and now somebody's just blown a motor somewhere.
Friends of our friends are not friends. I believe the motor blow is down in the pits, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue there. But, you know, you're in a position where you're just trying to figure out what you need. It's put the entire pack single file. And I'll tell you who's really benefited the most from this being single file and a lap car just ahead of them. It's Maximilian Sennemuller. He went a few laps longer than everybody else did in their stint at the same time as Hanson Pete. And with a car in front, he's just able to sit back and fuel save once again. So he has just put 2 great bits of work in, and I think he'll have himself there or thereabouts, just in about 10 laps advantage on everyone else.
Keep in mind, to be able to make the finish, you need a clean car. That's the main focal point you have to think about. Of note, for those who have not had a clean car at this point, Scott Berzier just DNF'd earlier, moments ago. Hugh Haycox. Hashimi Park did about 13 minutes ago. Toole is 34th. Robotsky is 35th. Freitas is 36th. Banfield was the blown motor we had heard in the backdrop. He was nearly done all his repairs for his meatball flag before the blow. He is 37th. You also have Labara early DNF. Wolf, he is currently, I believe, on a spotter stand after wrecking and not being on the lead lap early. So in our words, we have 30 cars on track. Check that now, 29, because Thomas Geisler just elected to pull into the pit lane himself. Everybody else is still running in some form of functionality, Christian.
Yeah, and at the moment we're actually kind of, I mentioned a while ago that we had that sort of second pack out there that's been slowly dropping further back from the leaders. And I think my initial estimate of 10 to 15 laps is probably wrong, but it does look like that grouping that's running from about 10th down to 17th is in danger of going a lap down if we stay green. So yeah, I don't know if they want to, you know, maybe organize up a bit better than they are, or maybe kind of shuffle out some of the damaged cards in that group, but they need to try and do something, because if it becomes only 9 on the lead lap, we're gonna have almost 15 cars 1 lap down. That's gonna be that's gonna be pretty difficult to get back on the lead lap for anybody in that group after that.
But here's the thing too. For reference, Brandon Rain's leading that second pack referred to down the front stretch as these cars are in turn 3. See how many cars are in this line? We've seen how much difficulty there was early on to manage up to 3 in a pack in lap traffic. If they're side by side even with the main grouping, by the time they reach these cars, and or they're side by side like this, that's going to be difficult to try and pass a train of about 10 cars that includes a modifier or 2 already.
Yeah, it's very true, and I think that if they do catch that second pack, they're obviously not going to want to just let him go by, and they're probably going to fight it, and that's where there's the possibility of maybe another wreck or an incident going on, because they just can't afford to lose the lap. There'd just be too many cars 1 lap down with no clear way of getting it back. You know, it'd be one of those situations where you'd have to hope for a caution mid-run where everybody on the lead lap pits so you can take a wave around, and it's still not an ideal situation. So I definitely think that if they do catch the second pack, they'll be forced to try and pass it on the top side, and that could get pretty messy, as we actually see looks like the lead pack is catching a group of 4 right now in the middle of 1 and 2.
Trailing, who's had massive technical issues several times today, David H. Baker, Brian Walker, Chris Barrett are in this pack, 22nd on back in this respective grouping. And oh my goodness, middle of the road is not the best line. Middle of the road nearly for Ryan Walker. They all get to the top barely in time.
Oh, I love what Travis Henderson's doing. I absolutely love it, because what he's effectively done is he's just masqueraded 4 places for no effort. He's on the front of the train. He wants to stay on the front of the train. Everyone's gone with the lap traffic rule and go up top if you're not there. I was surprised nobody stayed down low, tried to take it away from Henderson and say, no, I want to be in a position where I'm still on the lead lap and I'm going to lead the leading train. Henderson is a spearhead for this group, and this is glorious.
I have to say, you have to think they might have tried it. We've seen at least a couple of the Grizzly TFR cars from that pack think about it, but here's the thing, Christian. That's not as easy to do when the speed difference is about 10-15 miles per hour. And if the leaders have to slam on the brakes, yelly things happen.
Yeah, we saw Walker try and do it. He tried to stay on the bottom, and then it clearly wasn't happening, so he jumped up to the top side. But, you know, I think I understood that, and I think that made sense versus, say, what we were seeing earlier in the race where that kind of move was making for some really big wrecks. But, you know, I do like this play of Henderson's. It's a disadvantage in the sense of he's probably going to end up pitting on his own because he's going to use so much more fuel than everybody else. But he's making a net gain up until that happens. And, you know, maybe he can even drag some of these lead lap cars with him, because obviously his pace is quite good.
I was about to say, though, since technically, here's things with the cars were Grizzly TFR cars they just lapped, they can all still pit together. Same lap. Coordinate to get Henderson the lead lap back. They can still keep Henderson the lead lap if they can work together. If anything, all this is still benefiting more still.
Yeah, and it's possible, actually, with how few cars are now in the lead pack and kind of the number of TFR cars that are still in it. I think this is where we'll possibly see a breakaway on the next green flag pit stop. If they all come down at the same time and the guys who are still out there get a bit mixed up, or they're on slightly different strategies pitting on different laps, if they don't coordinate to kind of do the same thing, that is the moment I think the TFR cars could make a breakaway.
Keep in mind from this point, it's about a 2-stopper to make it to the end on fuel, and most of the lead cars have to go in about 10-15 laps. There were 17 cars in this pack for reference, possibly 18 now, as they pass by someone who just pit a while ago in Singali. 9 of them still are on the lead lap, mind you. Oh, this is dangerous. More nearly inside Henderson, nearly turned Henderson down the backstretch.
Those are the fine margins. You leave the door slightly open there on that inside, and someone could just sneak their way underneath, turn you over the front. And that will be a case of a flapjack ending, where you're going to be flat and jacked off into the wall. You know you got nothing off there that you got there, and you have to say that Travis Henderson has got to stay low and has got to stay with that yellow line. If he doesn't, he could get turned.
One driver did get caught sleeping with the checkup effect. Thomas Cope is now stuck on the top line, the only driver in that situation. Everybody else stuck to the bottom for the checkup, so Cope loses even more spots. After leading laps early and a speeding penalty, Cope is now at risk of dropping to 19th. In fact, will cut down towards the back of this grouping, towards the tail end. 75.3 of Sorenzo thought about outside. Up in front of him, Mark Redford is also wanting to try and get the top working. This is usually the time where drivers start to get pushy and want to try and go fighty.
This is dangerous though, because they've been side drafting. They've pulled themselves away a bit from that leading group. It looks like they've realized it and they're allowing it to close back up. But if they fight too much here, and if this group of three side drafts each other too much, it's possible they could lose the lead draft. It doesn't look like they're going to, but you've got to be really careful of that when everybody's organized up ahead of you. If you're going as, say, a pair or three cars around a solo car, you do not want that solo car to be side drafting you, because it's going to pull you away. It's gonna string out everybody in that group, and you can see it actually. If you look back around about the 73, there is now a bit of a gap formed. If that had gone on for another lap, then for sure it would have split this pack.
Hearing part of the reason for the checkup may have been is 71 has front end damage. The 64 has back end damage. The math says there is a chance someone got hit from behind. And as a result, all the drivers who are stringed out there, including Holman, are losing the pack.
They are, and this is just a very unfortunate situation for them. If they lose the pack, and they have done now, well, you're going to say goodbye to any hopes of staying with all of these drivers laps down. And now they've got work to do to get up to that front group once again. So it's a case of how quickly can they organize. Someone's going to dive into the pits there. It's going to be one of the TFR cars then that jumps in. It's the 11 making the decision to jump down on into the pits. So Tom Dreiling, then 21 laps away from the lead. Oh, he gets well out of the way. And the race continues on here. 86 left here at Daytona.
Or lap car being passed on by. That's Thomas Geisler. Lap car, should say. Even though it's just the one for now. The other grouping is about a third of the track ahead. Dreiling did complete his service. No issues on his entry after his technical issues early on. And all the drivers are saying one thing as the main focal point, it seems, Christian. They seem to like to work together the way things are going right now. And especially since there hasn't been any trouble since the early caution flags around lap 46 is when we started this run.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in this lead group of 9 with 85 to go, there's no real reason why you would want to kind of break that apart right now. You're faster than every other pack that's out there on track. You're looking at basically being the only 9 in the race. I mean, 10th is 36 seconds off the lead at this point. There's 2 more stops to go.
Something just happened. Mark Redford out of nowhere just got a black flag. I don't know how he got this. He was down the straightaway and just got a black flag.
Yeah, this is bizarre. I don't know what it would be for. I doubt it's incident points. We're not privy to that information here of the major series, how many incident points someone has, but that's not ideal for Mark Redford, and it may just be that he's going to have to go and serve that, and that will be a very cruel way for him to be out of the leading fight for the victory here today.
I am so confused here. Christian, can you shed lights on how this would happen at Daytona? Because I don't think I've ever seen it where you don't make contact, you don't have a pit stop sequence, and you just get a black flag, and apparently the signal is a cut the course.
Yeah, I would love to be able to explain why exactly that might have happened to him. The only thing I can think is that maybe he was, maybe he'd kind of not disconnected, but, you know, blinked out for a little bit, kind of when he crossed a sector line, and that's why it picked up that he cut the course.
Wow.
That tends to be what it is in those situations. It's kind of a rough connection to the server when you get those cut course penalties, but it's obviously very, very rare that it does happen, and obviously extremely unfortunate. I don't know if anybody from the league is in here who will clear this black flag for him, but
and he has to serve it this lap.
Would definitely say this is an erroneous black flag for him.
Well, that's something being taken note of. Redford not happy. He'll get disqualified if he doesn't serve it this time. He'll come and pit this time. The Grizzly TFR cars elect to all come down with Gabriel Ruse still being their best friend today.
That's pretty early, actually. 83 to go.
They are within the window.
Yeah, but it's not as... I'm surprised they didn't go all the way out to 80.
One driver did overrun the box. Was about to say Henderson again in our blunder. And Redford has now gone to the pit box and overran hit. So he'll serve his respective penalty for insert question mark. But the window is open. Still, the current race leader and Moore can make it another up to 7 to 10. Most of the others have to come in the next few. Up to 4 is what's being reported.
Absolutely, and something I would want to say just very quickly is that an erroneous flag like that, I don't think was the end of the world there in that situation. It's a huge disaster, but he's still in this race is Mark Redford, and that is the crucial fact. He is still in this race. He's still got an opportunity if things fall his way, and erroneous flags are very much like erroneous whistles. So I know one team that benefited from an erroneous whistle and made it to a Super Bowl.
Well, it is Super Bowl weekend next weekend, so I guess that fits. But coming up to 81 to go for most drivers, 80 to go for the main pack. The numbers are dwindling with the black flags. More stops being reported, and Facciaponte cuts a hard left. Campbell passes him down the apron. Both try and dive to the commitment cone. Well, they end up getting to the speed limit. Campbell was close. Yes, they both got it.
Campbell was absolutely flying into the pits there in the number 26. He was absolutely trying to find the limits. And, you know, Christian, how important is it to play with that line when you're in practice? It's not the sort of thing you look at. You put time in the setup, in terms of trying to get as much pace out of the car, looking at the long run. But how much practice is actually done with the pit line?
I think it's a really, really critical part of the race, actually, that goes somewhat unnoticed by a lot of drivers. We talked about it earlier with kind of where we've seen people slide into the grass and whatnot in previous years, and I've actually seen the opposite pit exit where drivers will try and go on old tires and they'll spin on the apron. So, you know, I always practiced it a lot. I thought it was really, really important. I would hope that there's other people out there who agree with that, but yeah, definitely you obviously want to maximize, but you don't want to be kind of dangerously near the limit, especially because it's never 100% consistent in terms of what you've got for tires. You know, you're not always pitting exactly 40 laps into a run on exactly the same track, temperature, state, and, you know, all those kind of things. But what I was going to mention was that those two drivers coming down just as a pair, that's really, really high risk. They're going to have to hope that they filter out in amongst a group that they can tag onto. Otherwise, they have a real chance of kind of being dropped from the lead 9.
And one thing, just noticing some context being given for the troubles for those just tuning in on how we got here after a disastrous round, let's put it that way, for Ross Banfield. We mentioned there was the relative issues that he was having with his box. It was apparently, this is what he is saying in the Discord for the Major Series for competitors and drivers for this campaign, where it was saying he was 10 seconds back in the leaders while being passed. At the same time, he had also reported he apparently had a computer virus on his PC. That is not a good combination, is the only thing you can say as some of the traffic is being managed again.
I wonder if we can get a replay on what's just happened to the 8 of Bram Renier as he just come in from the second group. He has clattered the wall trying to get into his box.
And he has gotten to the box, and we'll see if we can take a look at Bram Renier's because he visited the pit wall. And it was the inside wall. This is the hardest cut to the left end to the pit box I think I've seen.
You can see it here. He's got damage. He'll dive down into the pit. But the issue he's got is he's firstly, A, trying to brake to make the line, and he just about makes it. And then, oh, look, there's my box. Here we go. Hard left. Oops.
Wow. When you want to find your pit box, you want to get to it. Unfortunately, he went to the wrong pit box and backed up and down a few times. He just now finished his service. He had a black flag too. So, disaster. And he also just held up the 73 on his entry.
It's something we didn't mention was knowing where your pit stall is, but yeah, that's pretty important as well. Definitely good to know before the race starts.
And you pit there before. So there's that. More pit stops being reported for this grouping, by the way. Expect a big gaggle this time. And it's just the one who peels off from this car, but I can say it's been reported Ryan Walker plans to pit as well from the other cars that are in the 11th on back grouping.
It's a pretty big pack here, and there's a lot of work being done on it, and that is key. Because you look through this group, it does hold Soranzo and Bila and Harrod, but it also has Campbell, who would be net race leader after this. Thatcher Ponte's there, Roos, Conway. Don't count out Jamie Conway. He's right up there in the championship at the moment. Melnarovic is in there and Cordell Cologne. They are all on the leading lap of this race right now, and they are all trying to get themselves forward as much as possible. And we're 3 wide in that group with Soranzo being absolutely absorbed at this point in time. So they just about get around, and it is very dicey.
That's Jamie Conway being taken 3 wide. Up the middle goes Monerwich. He wants to cut the line. Soranzo stays in said line. Now they're 3 wide with the lap traffic. This could get ugly.
Leader's also in as well, so this is the mega lap.
Will they calm down long enough to figure out who will be the race leader? Beeler and Herod are still yet to pit. They are in this group too, mind you. The net leader is Sean Campbell. The 011 has just finished their service, and they're coming down the pit lane. This could get interesting for how this plays out by turn 2 exit. Will these drivers peel on down who have to take the service? No, they can still go an extra couple. You also have Russell in this pack on the bottom side. Henderson, he gets some help teamwork-wise to get himself back on the lead lap for now. Melnerwich, he takes the race lead net. They'll try and see where they cycle with a 011 because Moore, he may come up with a massive gap here, but he won't be up to speed, though, to take advantage of it, Christian.
Yeah, they've all kind of realized what the deal is now, and they're all actually trying to kind of make a breakaway happen in these couple of laps as everybody's trying to get figured out. The TFR cars had really got formed up. They're back to the head of the line. Gabriel Roos has been able to sort of merge in with them somehow. I don't know whether it's just the color of his car being similar to theirs and they pick him up incidentally or what, but he's just really following them around the racetrack as we see a couple more now coming down into pit road.
Absolute calamity now breaking out through this window, it seems, but the net leader up into speed in time for now is Moore. Problem is he's running 179 miles an hour. Henderson 191. He holds on to the lead lap. Monerwich takes the race lead with the help of Gabriel Ruse, and there goes the fast line to the top line this time.
And they don't want him in the group at all. You see them leaving loads of room to the bottom. They're trying to send him all the way to the tail end of the line, but he is going to get picked up. There's some side drafting going on right now. Looks like Fassi Ponte's just slid in front of him.
I wonder if he was actually deliberately a little bit slower trying to stay back into that group so he can get more of that fuel save between now and the end as another driver decides they want to dive down into the pits. That's Alexander Russell down there making the call. But I think the key here for Muller is I think he still wanted to fuel save. I don't think he wanted to be confident enough to go out there and make it all the way to the end on 2 green flag runs out from the front. I think he wants a bigger advantage than what he had on that run.
And that was Alexander Russell peeling on down to the pit lane that time. He also got caught for speeding. That's now about 20% of the field getting a penalty throughout this race, it seems. But now it's settling things again. 8 cars on the lead lap are in this main train. Then you have Bueller and Herod, who are alone again. They are 44 seconds behind. Then it's another 3 seconds back to Ring, Joey and John, along with Solo. Cope is a lap down now.
This is not looking good for Soranzo right now.
No.
He's stuck on the top.
Especially since he's trying to side draft hard indeed in that 73. No one wants to let him in. He just side drafted a lap car in Solo to try and get a run. He's getting side drafted back. You see that in the backdrop, upper right corner of your screen. That is not going to help the 7th place car on track compared to what they're doing up in the front of the group. Lap traffic is ahead though too, so this could get interesting with not just the 45, but you have Bueller, Herod, Redford, who are just up the track at the other end of the tri-oval. What line will they choose? Most have chosen the top today, outside of the crashes. They're choosing the bottom. The lap cars have chosen the bottom this time. And the leaders are checking up for them.
Well, this is the awkward bit, right? So you've got the leaders on the bottom. Lap traffic saw what happened last time. They're going to do it all over again. And the key here to everyone's on the bottom and the traffic's on the bottom is someone's going to have to go high. And guess what? It's number 24 who's decided, you know what? You want to play games? Play silly games, win silly prizes. We're going high side, and I want to be the leading car on the last car on the leading lap. So I've still got my lap. Push me along. I want this race.
Bueller's prize for being that first car in the 3. He loses the lucky dog spot 2 to Brandon Ring, who is in the line. Still 2 are electing to stay at the bottom. Everybody's trying to get the wall to work now because of this. Handsome Pete loses that last spot on the lead lap. Like we're getting a lap down the back. Mark Redford, the only other driver electing to stay down low here. And they're both starting to lift off. Lap cars ahead are on the top. This is getting ugly. Raniers is staying up top. Schuler is staying up top. 3 wide with the lap cars again. Rain all over the place in the middle. Rain has a checkup with side draft. Contact. Fasciaponti sends himself in the 54 to the infield. No caution yet. He spins up the track in front of Pack 2. Will we get the caution yet? Yes, we do as they buoyed him.
Wow. And it was such a great green flag run. We went nearly 90 laps green here at Daytona, and the traffic started playing games. And these were games of either A, I'm going to let you through, or B, I want to stay on my lead lap. And that was a case of everyone getting caught out in the wrong position. Fasciaponti saw it check up in front of him, went down low. By the time he'd gone down low, Julien Gion, who's a lap down, was already there. And that's why there was contact, and that's why Fasciaponti went around.
Here's a look at the replay. Again, that's Raniers who's on the top. Wow. What caused the cut to the left there?
This looked like it was kind of a bit of a function of what was going on up ahead. I'd noticed there was a lot of cars towards the tail end of the pack there that had kind of got a lot of momentum built up. Then we had the 3 wide up ahead. You can see Ring was looking like he was struggling to stay in the middle there. And Fasciaponti gets checked up, goes down to the bottom, but wasn't clear when he did it.
And then stays on the track, bring out the caution flag. Again, you have to be on the racing surface to be able to trigger the caution. 54 lucky to avoid the cone as well there. During all that, Navarro did park his car. Bring us to 29 still running for this caution period. We are still outside the fuel window. Longest the drivers can go by estimates around 20-ish laps to go, Christian. This could get interesting on the strategy dice now, since some of them just pit.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be one more stop no matter what. It's just a question as to when you're going to make it. Now, I think personally, if I'm in this lead group of 9 that's going to become 10 when Pete Herod gets his lucky dog, I'm going to pit because it's going to make that last stop so much shorter for me. and that's a possibility of being able to get a breakaway going. And I know I've kept talking about it because I'm convinced that it's possible, especially with team cars. As we see the TFR group, it looks like they're going to go for that strategy. But you know, if you had 4 together who pit with, say, 30 to go, came out as a good group, I truly think that you could make that work. It might be a bit more difficult now because everybody's going to be in the single pack and whatnot, but it's always come down to pit stops and positioning at the end of these races. And especially if you've got a good number of team cars, you can really leverage that to be. I mean, we've seen it a lot in the Coke series. How many times have we seen, say, the Team Conti cars all come out in the same group, you know, and basically lock out the race? It's totally kind of a known strategy at this point to do, and I'm a bit surprised that we haven't really seen it yet in this race.
I know what you're referencing, especially with how things fared out with that grouping this year at the super speedways. Still surprised no one made a move for a playoff spot at Talladega to get into the finale. Still, we had 3 cars stay out this caution flag. That's the more relevant of the 3 thoughts there. Rouge, Sorenzo, Conway. All are rolling the dice here. They would have to pit about 10-15 laps earlier than everybody else here and need a caution to be able to hold on. And here's the thing. No one can get a wave if these drivers are out here. They can't peel back down here now unless they want a green flag penalty for pitting with the lane closed. So this just pin 10th on back a lap down here.
Absolutely, which is a very clever strategy by the 323. The less drivers that you have in a race like this, then the better chance that you have of winning that race. It's just pure numbers. Do you want 17 drivers or 16 drivers that you're racing against, or do you want 9 drivers that you're racing against? I'd prefer 9 drivers, and that's why you're seeing that sort of decision being made. The other thing that you'd probably look at as well here with that decision, Justin, is the fact that drivers know that at the end of the race, when drivers are going to get eyes bigger than the belly, they're going to have to go for percentage moves in order to win this race here at the 500. They know that cautions may come out late, and that might be a huge factor. If we get a quick caution after this one, someone runs into someone else, they're back on strategy, and they've pretty much done exactly what they needed to do by staying out.
It's getting ready for the restart. For those curious, there are 3 splits today here at Daytona for European region action. Sportsman action is currently being broadcast by our friends over at Radio on TV. Some history with working on GSRC broadcasts for some of their crew. Miguel Hagstrom is currently scored up towards the front. And your favorite team, Jake, from pre-race, Racing Turtles, are controlling the top line. It's also cloudy there. Will that be a sign of what could be to come for the pro side? We'll see. With the top 3 electing to roll the dice. Rouge, for the first time in a long time leading. Sorenzo looking for his first lead laps. Conway looking for big points. The road course specialist, showing great speed in the stock cars. Quick thoughts, Christian, before the green.
I think Roos has got a strong car, and I think that Conway would work with him. But the guys I'm really looking at is TFR, and I think if they can get formed up, they're going to be hard to beat.
We'll see if this works out indeed, as Gabriel Rouge has found some friends from that grouping, the teammates from his camp, not having a pretty time. Rouge on the wild pedal, the green flag's back out. We're back to racing.
Oh, that's a good run there on the bottom. Conway immediately going by Sorenzo, but he gets some help from Maximilian Senna-Muller. And as they hit this run up into 1 and 2, look at the run that Sorenzo gets. It wasn't initial, but my, is he going to go to the point and take the lead at the 500?
Sorenzo to the race lead. A big charge from the lap cars. That's Mark Redford, who is 2 laps down, who pushes his buddy. Moore to the race lead. Moore is gone. Redford nearly turns him.
Oh, I didn't expect that much pace. He's been threatening it, but checking up. But that's the first time in anger I've really seen it. Oh, how close to Muller do you want to get? They're trying to merge into traffic. There, I believe, was Chris Barrett as he tries to get himself back through 1 lap down. So these two working together to try and get themselves back to 1 lap down and then hopefully get themselves towards Lucky Dog.
So with all of that, Redford is now one of the final cars 1 lap down with Chris Barrett, mind you. They are not in the Lucky Dog spots. That is Chalet, who is in that grouping in the 7 car, in 11th, who is in that spot. To the top line and without Friends' ruse. Will he get some help from his friends? No, in fact, his old friends pass him.
There's a line building towards the tail end of the pack, though. That looks like it's going to be coming pretty soon. Yeah, all those drivers who are 1 lap down are trying to fight their way back forwards. The thing to keep in mind is that, okay, they're at the head of the line of the last being 1 lap down, but you know they've got such a long way to go because you've got all those other cars that started at the tail end of the pack who were also 1 lap down. So they're actually quite a bit further off the lead than it might look. They need another caution and a wave around to really have a chance here.
Not to add more pressure to Gabriel Ruse, but Dude Conrad is now watching the action from the spotter stand. I believe that may be Daniel Morad, who is a part of that grouping for their cars, mind you. A well-known real-world racer and streamer on the road course side. Here on iRacing as well as an IMSA competition based out of Canada. Now Ruse in turn has been shuffled to 7th place in this grouping. Sean Campbell, I want to give that shout out again. Plus 30 still for the 26, despite dealing with damage for RSR Esports all day long. Is the first car, or the last car, single file, and now the first one up top.
They're starting to just move up, though, and temper their runs. Campbell saw Facciaponte move up, and so Facciaponte suddenly has nothing, and he looks way up, saying, really? You really wanted to do that? He had a little thought of about 3 wide, didn't work. Now, if Soranzo was wise, he'd probably jump up there as well, because he's only got 1 car to clear at this point. And that is a very strong second line that sits itself there at the moment. He doesn't choose it. And Campbell here, with a little bit of help from Facciaponte, is really going to be running here to Max Sennamuller, who I think might just have to start, and does start defending up top.
Up to the top indeed goes Moore to try and defend. Will that open the door for Sorenzo to lead his first lap of the day? Yes, he takes it down into turn 2 exit. But remember that top line very quick down the straightaways. Soranzo still boxed in a midst of C and several cars from Apex Tech should say. Will he see the chance to try and dart ahead? No. More in fact getting that top line to go even quicker in the corners now. Big block for Redford and he gets hooked. Crash to the inside. The 42 of Conway goes off to the apron to dodge. 1 car and Beelers cuts the whole line to try and get the Lucky Dog. He still avoids trouble. The rest of the cars get rolling. No caution. We stay green.
And all of that, because it happened down on the apron there, Justin, means it's green. If it had come back up onto the racing surface, that would still be a yellow flag, a caution, and we'd have shut this race down. Unfortunately, it happens in the infield, and for the goodness of this race, we're still green, we're still running. Sean Campbell, your leader.
For Sean Campbell, first time leading today. After 141 laps complete, led his first one last time by. The Lucky Dog is now controlled with those moves by Bueller. Side by side, Soranzo, this is not helping the 73. The 5th place car is getting side drafted, and it could get interesting here. The top 4 have broken away from that.
Yeah, everybody getting much more aggressive now, and obviously that incident that we had really broke everybody up, but just looked like too aggressive of a block way too late on, really, to make that happen. Top 4, if this side drafting keeps going, they might be able to break away, but it looks like they're starting to get a bit more organized, especially on the top here.
Now the bottom's getting rolling, and now they've sorted themselves out. Bueller now gets freight trained by Milnerwich, who wants to settle this out. By the way, the Nightmare Fuel is still running well, Christian. The 8 car is an 18th.
I know. I keep seeing it every time it goes by. I'm just trying to pretend it's not there, if I'm honest.
And then you wake up during the middle of the night and realize, how am I going to make sure that car is not in the lead pack on next Tuesday?
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
He's getting past pass, by the way, by the 71. Again, Hoffman wants the lucky dog. He's now got it for now. This lucky dog fight could get intriguing. They are running quicker than the bottom line, who are the leaders.
And once again, we're getting in position where we're saying if you're on that front, you want to get there. You want to make sure you're on the lead lap coming to the final laps of the race. And this is the sort of time when you're going to have to make some moves. You're going to have to make some choices. And it's never going to be easy, but it's now happening. You've got that lap traffic train. And now what's going to be interesting is how they start to follow. They're lining up. TFR Grizzly just behind the lap cars here. Melnarovic on the front of that. They're going to try and use that, I would say, reputation of the lap traffic train to push themselves up forward if they can.
Hoffman has actually unlapped himself down this lap. He's now the driver in 11th spot. Also getting help from Handsome Pete, who's in the lead. This is getting hectic, and remember, this all was sparked by the crash down into Calamity Corner off of turn 4 from the block from Redford, who is now out of the race as a result of that incident.
I mean, where did Pete Harrod come from? He was on the verge of being a lap down not so long ago, and now he's leading the race.
He was last on the lead lap a couple laps ago, being stuck in the traffic.
He just does Handsome Pete things. You just need to learn to accept that. He's Handsome Pete. He does handsome things.
Well, there's a reason he's handsome, according to his team, right? And now he's got a chance to have a pole way. Campbell lifting off. Bueller wants his laps back too. And as a result, the Grizzly TFR cars, they have all moved to the top. Campbell he's getting side drafted. Campbell is now by the 93 in sim. 0099 should say.
I think that's not really what the TFR guys are wanting to have happen here. I think they've got four formed up, ready for a run on the top, but because they got the side drafting going on up ahead, they're not actually really able to build any momentum. The side draft is great if you're going backwards and you want to try and arrest that slide, but it hurts you as much as it helps you if you're the ones with momentum. You need to get away from
Oh, they were trying to push it 3.
And it looks like the Grizzly TFR cars don't want to play around anymore. They nearly tried to shove it 3 wide, Jake, not just play to make it 3.
That was about as close as you could push it 3 wide as you could. That was a case of trying to keep it all there and nicely together. It would have worked, but only for a brief moment. They have to stay stuck behind Julien Jean there, who is just in front in 13th position. Pete Harrod still your leader. It's Campbell in second. It's Thatcher Ponte in third, but I think the TFR cars gambled about 10 laps ago. I'm not sure this gamble's paid off, because as soon as it got there, it didn't. Now they're going to have to be careful of some lap traffic just in front of them. That is David H. Baker that they're going to have to meander their way by. And as they thread the needle now, you've got to be pretty much on your A game here, as we're 55 laps away, and it is starting to get to that level. Oh, there's contact! Oh. How on earth are they all together? That was drama, and there's the hit. Sorrento, he's going to go around now. We've got trouble, and surely, yes, we have a caution.
Caution is out. Baker is running backwards down the short chute. Several more down the apron. And we're under caution, coming to 52 laps to go. That was coming, Christian, for about 10 laps.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting to start seeing 3 wide moves, and we'd seen already through 3 and 4 earlier in the race, drivers kind of wobbling around in that middle lane, just looking like they were kind of getting buffeted between the bottom and the top lane. And you know, that's the thing that you got to be careful of. And yeah, it's understandable, you know, with 52 to go to kind of be getting more aggressive with things, but we've lost a couple of cars now out of that lead fight. And this is going to make it really marginal on fuel.
Don't you love fuel mileage races? But you can see that was very dangerous, first of all, there. And then the stack up as a result of the dangerous moment, Jake.
Yeah, this was just a case of a chain reaction. It was a little bit of contact that started. Then there was checkups, people grabbing the apron as they got thrown out of their rhythm. It all starts around just in front, and really you can see here, you'll watch, there's the first hit, in as there's the checkup. Sorrento is a little slow to it, nowhere to go, has to move up to stop the car from going around. He makes contact, and well, it's goodbye and good night in terms of that accident there. And that means that we get ourselves only, I believe at this point in time, the 5th caution of this race.
Here's luck from Russell. Just a little clatter on the wall. How was Sorenzo not hit a second time by going backwards for 200 meters?
I guess you're going to have to ask some deity here, Justin, because I don't know.
Campbell and
people going back.
Conway and Campbell stayed out despite being in the incident. Holman as well has done the same. He's the lucky dog, though, I believe. But everybody else did take the fuel. Again, this is outside the window to make it by about 5 laps. So this could get really intriguing here with under 50 to go here at Daytona International Speedway. First off the lane was Hansen Pete, a 7-second stop. The first with a stop that was longer than 14 seconds, Gabriel Ruse, who was in 9th. Borg does keep the lead lap in 10th. Sorenzo, a lengthy stop after his respective incident. Whole complexion of this race just flipped upside down again. It's almost like, you know, almost a flipping the sands of time almost, where you reach the end of the pile of sand in the hourglass, and then you flip it over, and then it flips the strategy again, just like that. Christian.
Yeah, I mean, the race kind of just changed, especially when you get into the last. I mean, I always thought it was kind of the last half it would change, but certainly when you get into the last quarter, the style and the level of aggression is quite different.
And the intensity level too.
Yeah, exactly. You'll totally see more and more 3 wide as we get kind of closer to the end. I mean, you got to try and make something happen. What is the point in sitting out there and riding in line when you can try and make that 3rd lane go?
Under caution once more at Daytona. We'll take a very quick step aside when we come back. The restart, under 50 to go at Daytona.
Side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
Abreast into the braking zone. This is sensational racing.
And getting ready to cross. He goes around the outside, but it's not enough.
And for a way by it.
Hollander's going to come back at him. It's going to be a race to the line. Does he have enough?
Welcome back to Daytona for more coverage of the Major Series Daytona 500. The top 12 are on the lead lap with under 50 to go. Keep in mind, the next time drivers reach the racetrack is for road action, whether that be at Orem Park GP and or Sandown, depending on availability from the upcoming builds for the Landdown 240, March 13th. Find out more information during post-race. Green flag is out. Back to racing. And Sean Campbell, who was involved in that last incident, did not take the damage repair or a stop, Jake. He is getting passed quickly by someone who got no damage from it, Jamie Conway. And he's now upset he's getting pushed in the corner.
It's tricky. You know, you got to be careful of being pushed in the corner. Pushing on the straightaway is very, very safe. In the corner, towards the end of the race, you got to go for it, but it's uncomfortable. With 49 to go, probably wouldn't be doing it.
See intern Vacciaponti, who was involved in some of the caution flags early on after being the control car, the outside line most of this run. He's trying to retake the lead. 11 laps led before that action. Now, 150 is the car number. He leads lap 152's conclusion, this time with the help of Cordell Cologne, who we haven't mentioned all day, Jake.
No, we absolutely haven't. And Cordell, in terms of how he's been running this race, has just been a silent agent. He's been moving through the field subtly, and he's got to where he's needed to. But the key here for Cologne is that he is up there in front. His teammates are nowhere to help him. They are in 7th and they are in 12th. They're nowhere direct, and you're not getting that team game working. It's a case of individuals trying to be individuals at this point, and you're starting to see it there. Gabriel Roos was trying to get underneath and say, can I steal it by taking the middle? Answer to that is no, and it continues on. Facciaponti leads, Conway second, and Cologne fighting hard with Campbell.
Keep in mind the chess match for drivers wanting to unlap themselves without the lucky dog. How about the 7? Chalet has been pinned a lap down most of the day so far, Christian. He's been close to the lucky dog and actually got it one time, but now he wants the lead lap again. 13th on the circuit, first car a lap down, the next closest is Cope.
Yeah, did a good job, and you know, he was one of those drivers that was involved in one of the early incidents, which is very unfortunate because he was running near the front of the field. It looks like we've got a pretty aggressive move going on at the tail end of this line. It's stalled out, but yeah, for Schleray, it's a pretty good recovery. I think he's in a great spot where if another caution does come out, he's actually got a chance of winning the race still.
Take it on board, listen though for a second, because if you look at the revs, guess what gear he's in?
We got another 4th gear driver out here.
He's been in the 9,000s the whole straightaway.
Someone might want to remind him that, you know, 5th is there. It can be used.
It's working on the outside though, because Cologne has taken the race lead with the help of the push from Gabriel Roos. The 50 of Cologne peels on down to the bottom. Chalet elects to also go to the bottom this time.
And just like that, this is what we're going to see in this race. Drivers are going to go up and down and around, and it's going to be a cycle as they go through. You cycle to try and get to the front, you push someone back. You then find yourself in a case of about 10, 15 laps, 5 or 6 rows back in terms of the pack. Suddenly you're thinking, wow, okay, I'm 5 or 6 rows back. I've got to get to the outside. And that's what perpetuates this ever-changing motif of what a great racing front pack is.
During the Raven, an issue with Hoffman, remember, was the lucky dog during the caution flag period. He peeled down at full speed down to the pit lane, pulled a Scott Wimmer, went to the pit lane, had to come back down and serve a black flag, then took service. A busy time.
That was nearly disaster there for Facciaponti. It's completely new to the run. Contact as they come out of 4.
Campbell holds on to it. Facciaponti now with the demolished spoiler. Soranzo drives on by along with Handsome Pete. Top line gets bottled up. That is Mario Schroller, who's been caught for speeding twice today, who's now behind the 150.
Soranzo's pretty aggressive with the bump drafting there, but something just doesn't look right with Facciaponti right now. We've seen him go up and block lanes quite aggressively throughout the day, but you know, the cars always look like it's got the pace to do it. And now it just kind of doesn't. I don't know whether that's a legacy from that earlier incident where he got spun around and kind of the caution came out because of that, or if there's something else going on, because he just doesn't look like he's really got any pace.
Well, he does have significant damage now in turn. Has been dealing with front-end damage since the early going. And now, he may get swarmed by lap cars wanting to jump the line. Yes, those are lap cars now leading the top train. That is Gene, who is once those 1 lap down, trying to get a lap back for the lucky dog. You have Daniel Solo, who is also 1 lap down to the train. Travis Henderson, who's a lead lap car, jumping the queue. Moore jumping the queue. And then Beeler, who is also jumping the queue. Again, you can tell we're inside the fuel window because it's the go light for most of the drivers to go. Albeit, still outside actually making it unless they get a caution from here, without being it.
Well, they're all there, and they all know they want to start jumping up through. And if they want to be in this race, they've got to be up on that high line. And crucially, looking at some of the drivers who are in that high line, Travis Henderson, who has been so sensational about running up the high line and getting to where he wants to be. He's in that high line. I think he's going to start making a ploy here to join his teammate Cordell Cologne, and it's blocked hard by Gabriel Roos, and it completely shuffles everything out and almost in the back. There's trouble. They're in the fence, and now we're going to get the caution.
It's calamity down the backstretch. Caution is out. Soranzo hit. Beeler wrecked. Cope involved. Mount Erwich involved. And absolute madness as we are inside the fuel window, but it all comes with the caution coming out as they slam each other back on the track.
Oh. That was unexpected at the end there, but one driver I was going to mention, Harrod made an amazing save coming off of turn 2, only to then get cleaned out later on.
Wow. Again, the trigger. Daniel Solo again, who is one lap down at this point, colliding with the 54. Then, twofold crash.
Just huge, and you can see it right now as they go through the middle. It is so difficult when you're trying to stop that lap traffic train coming up, because once you let one through, you're letting everybody through. Gabriel Roos had to come up and cover it. He noticed at the very last minute, and when everything went away, it was 3 wide in the middle, and that's why. There, he's blocked it. Now we get 3 wide, and because they're checking up, there's 3 different incidents that happen as they come out of 2 that cause that huge multi-car pileup.
So despite being part of the trigger, avoids most of the carnage and avoids being modified. Again, that's the Volvo paint scheme of the day. Did they try and bump draft their Christian in the corner despite being behind a car first?
Yeah, it definitely looked like that. It looked like they were kind of just not willing to check up for you know, the stack up that was happening. We're just going to try and push through it. Yeah. I can understand it, but it's very, very high risk. It almost always goes wrong.
And I'm curious about one more part of it. If we can take a look with Soranzo. He looked like he was getting back going, and then he gets cleaned out a second time in this. Yeah, you see the 3 wide taken after some bumping in the check. But watch the 73 here. You also have Handsome Pete, and you're getting turned in the checkup with Soranzo trying to avoid this.
Yeah, you see him just getting tagged as he's going by, and unfortunately gets driven into the car that's already wrecking on the top side there.
Here's the part referred to, the watch the 73, that's the red car. And he again, able to gather it back up, but watch that blue car right there, left side. He comes up the track, tries to avoid cutting through Le Mans, cleans him out, and nearly wrecks the 3rd car.
Yeah, clearly not an intentional thing, but just, you know, trying to get back on track as quick as he could, and unfortunately causing another wreck as he did so.
Taking our swing here. Listed on board, this is the 150. Fasciaponti.
Oh, how do you avoid all that? How do you avoid all that? That is elite.
He did end up taking 42 seconds of repairs during the caution period. And in turn, we'll see how things fare out from here after calamity strikes. The race leader now on track is Travis Henderson. He took a 5-second stop. Gabriel Roos, 6 seconds in second. Cologne, Moore round out the top 4. Then Campbell and Conway took tires this window. Monerwich also took tires. Handsome Pete took a 25-second stop to come out in 8th out the race. 9 are on the lead lap total. Fasciaponti amongst the final ones. Check that 10. Chalet did take the wave this caution, it appears. And of note, the 150 still has a fast repair available, Christian. He is electing to hold on to it for the final 40.
Yeah, I think it made sense for him to try and get the repairs. I had mentioned that he was looking kind of a little bit off pace that last run. Didn't look like he was really involved in anything through the wreck itself. I don't know whether he thinks he might have picked up some damage or whatnot, but obviously did get some repairs. I think it's smart to keep the fast repair, if I'm honest. The car, for the most part, still looks pretty decent, and even though he couldn't really make any runs go, he wasn't falling out of the pack. I don't think we're done wrecking, so I would have kept the fast repair as well.
John, Sorenso, Beeler are all out of the race from that. Also pulling off track during that caution period was Tom Dreiling, who is 29th. Last car running is still Thomas Geisler. Give him credit. He's running 22nd. He'll be able to gain a potential top 20 if another car has an issue. At the moment, there are 10 on the lead lap. There are 11th through 17th on the pylon who are 1 lap down on the circuit, 2 laps down, 18th all the way towards the end of those running outside of only a couple others. Baker, Schroer, Geisler are more than that. Green flag is out. Henderson back in control after leading early and having to recover from a speeding penalty.
I just had a look there at the 011. Muller really tried to get a massive launch coming off of that start. He had to check it up ever so slightly as the green came out, but it's working here. And on the outside, it's the 3-2-3 and Gabriel Roos, who looks like he's trying to push it to the point. But crucially, on the bottom, it's 2 of these Grizzly machines that are going to be doing as much as they can to hold it off, but it won't matter because they're 1 and 2, and here comes Conway.
Conway very quiet much of the run. He's been trying to assert his dominance late on in this one. He's looking to lead the top line for his first lap of the day and brings Handsome Pete with him after the manual repairs from the 21. Conway to the race lead for Apex Tech. And he just barely got credit for the late lap as well by 17 100ths.
It's so important right now what you're seeing here from Conway. He's trying to make that high line work, and if it comes to a green-white checker potentially at the end of this race, that's the sort of reality you have to be in. You've got to be alert, and that proves that if you are back there on the 3rd row, you can still win that race, and it's going to be a huge scramble if something like that happens. He's got the overlap with, guess who? Car number 21, Handsome Pete Harrod, has got himself into play as well. And oh, it gets close for 3rd as they're trying to get the lap back from 2 laps down. Michele Sangali almost into the side of the 3-2-3.
Here's the intriguing part of all this. Not just the fact that a 2-lap down car wants to make money moves with under 36 to go. The drivers who started towards the front have caved in front noses. That includes Ruse. Now Sangali nearly adds some cars to the damage list. He's taken 3 wide in the middle of 1 and 2 and nearly turns 2 cars. Can't find a hole yet. Another car's in the wall.
It's desperately trying to get back in the bottom line. He's in that middle with no help, and it's just, you get the double negative side draft, so to speak, from the cars on the bottom and the top, and it just pulls you back if you got no help. Obviously still trying to get his lap back. You mentioned a little bit about cars with damage. Yeah, I did notice the Roos has got pretty significant front end damage, but obviously not really holding him back too much.
Grizzly up top.
Teamwork now coming into play. Won't make the dream work. Chris Barrett also jumping on. He is the first car 2 laps down in this race. A bump draft now coming to the back end of Travis Henderson. And again, the trend usually, if you bump draft in the corners, you usually crash. They're getting very dangerous to hitting that mark.
They really are. You can see it right now as they jump up again on that high line. They're about 4 cars back at this point, and they've had to work and coordinate here. It's so difficult to do in a pack that's ever changing and evolving. You've got to have your head on a swivel to know when's the time to go low, when's the time to go high. At the moment, they say it's the time to go high, but how many people actually want to be on that high side, giving the Grizzly team some help?
No one else ducking down. Remember, Gabriel Ruse has indicated he likes to work with them, it seems, today. No move to duck out to the outside, though. Remember, would slow down the chances outside, possibly. But the speeds are slower, too, remember. Because it's not just as simple as full on, full out. It's still a tight window. Right now, they're looking at 39 laps if they make it to the end here on this tank. If they take this to the checkered without a GWC Christian.
Yeah, it's still a little bit marginal. You see the 011 going up now to lead that top line, and I was just going to mention that it looks like Cordell is kind of about 50% of the way there with kind of knowing how to push the car. is pretty stable, pushing him down the straightaways, but what he's not really doing is he's not really opening any gaps in the corners so that then he's got some momentum to push down the straightaways with. And I think that's why they weren't really getting that top going. You see Jamie Conway's now gone up and blocked the top. He sees that 011 coming. He's not going to let him take the lead.
Bit of a block indeed, nearly getting turned around. Moore elects to give him the break. Handsome Pete elects to take advantage to take the race lead again. 33 laps to go for Pete Herod.
3 wide. Oh, Muller sees the Grizzly cars for the first time, pushing up on the real high side. Conway wants to steal their run as well, and they go back down to 2 as they go through the tri-oval. What's the cost, though? They've dropped about 5 car lengths, and the train almost contacted in the back.
Facciaponte was that close contact. He ran over the back end of one of the modifieds in the group. And now he's lost the draft nearly. Conway with some darting. 3 wide nearly down the backstretch. Moore tries to make some big moves. He gets shuffled out. Now it's 5 cars in the bottom, and several of them are laps down.
Cologne got pushed up into the wall there through 2. Contact with Conway. He ducks down low. It's a very aggressive down low. He shuts the door on the lap down Alexander Russell. But Harrod with the lead right now, and there is no high line.
Just 3 cars are stuck up there, and one of them is on the lead lap, who has been a contender most of this run, has been a dominant force, the middle portions. Travis Henderson, the early portion dominator amongst that too with Thomas Cope. 30 to go. This time by for the Great American Race. It could be anybody's race with how this has gone today. And I mean anybody's.
That top's moving pretty good now.
Here it comes with, once again, the push going for Moore with the help of Travis Henderson. Nearly side by side fully for 3rd. Will get to 3rd, and the top is now rolling again. Quicker in the corner, in fact, for the corner exit. More help joining. Danny Solo has joined that grouping again. This was one of the other Apex Tech cars. Race lead still head by Handsome Pete. But now it's Moore again who leads the whole pack.
Such a good run, and it's not going to be 1, it's not going to be 2, it's going to be 3 that's clear, that drop down, and that is so vital that they put 3 cars in distance here. You got there, of course, at the front, Max Senna-Muller. Henderson, remember, was a lap down, or on the fringes of a lap down for the majority of that race. He's now in 2nd in this one, and you're starting to wonder, well, who is going to make that run up to the top? You're going to have Solo, who's going to try and get through, and on top of that, just behind him, probably best place on the outside line is Jamie Conway after the contact and being shuffled back down the pack. He's got a chance to come back through again. Under 30 now here at Daytona.
Remember, though, fast repair was used by the 13, but they are losing ground. Only 188 down the straightaway. The inside running 191 miles per hour into the corner. And that may start an exodus from the top groove yet again, especially with the Grizzly TFR cars up there. Keep in mind, Cope is the first car 1 lap down. He is 3rd in the choo-choo train on the bottom side. Will he try and lap himself fully? Hoping to try and have this go green and or bank on the caution. We'll see as the top line still has some wanting to commit, but it's not working as great as before, as the clouds say hello.
Yeah, the momentum's just not really with it right now. It looks like Solo is not really able to lead it that well, but it also looks like the car behind it, well, we see another driver jumping up to the top, so maybe it's going to go now. But it just doesn't look like they're formed up as well. They're not working as well together as they were previously.
Keep in mind, top line once again grouped up with 71 wanting to get the lap back. Technical issue for a second for 2nd place overall in Henderson. It could get wild now for the Lucky Dog because Cope is blocking for it. Cope wants the Lucky Dog spot. The lead lap cars fill the gap. The top line checks up for the block.
And that's so crucial. That Lucky Dog is going to be a counterpoint in this race. Who can put themselves in, firstly, A, the Lucky Dog position, or B, on the leading lap itself. Cope wants the leading lap itself. He'll want to push forward. And if he does move out there to the front, once again, Maximilian Senna-Muller, I don't think will want to argue too much with it because he'll very much like the ability to save fuel instead of being left out to dry on the front of the train.
Look on board, you see the right side. This is the driver. Again, one of the Apex Tech cars. It's the 024 specifically. This is Chris Barrett, who is still 2 laps down. Still looking to help some of the drivers who are in the conversation for the win from his respective technical alliance in this one. Keep in mind, remember that thought process we mentioned a moment ago? Thomas Cope wants to follow suit with it, and he brings Holman with him. Some of the lap cars are making moves. You can see how comfortable Russell is in all this.
Oh, he's tense. He's absolutely tense. He's hunched up, shoulders up, tense. You know, it looks like he's going to start hyperventilating at any moment.
And he's actually been involved in quite a few incidents today already. So, there's a big stack. Huge wreck coming after 2.
Oh, will he get through it all? Yes, he does. No caution. It was all on the apron.
Oh, and Cologne around on the front. We might actually get a late one depending on how many cars actually reach him in time, because he's going to have to do another.
Cologne stuck in the wall.
Point in time.
How is there no caution? I will leave it to Christian to find out the answer during the week.
No,
but either way...
Well, there's nowhere near him, yeah?
4 wide, down off of turn 2. 2 people rammed the back end, and the lead group has separated out.
Well, it's now 5 at the front who can win this. It's Muller, Henderson, Harrod, Roos, and Campbell.
Hearing that Ryan Walker got stuck against the wall to be the trigger point of that. Cologne getting a big piece of it from the lead grouping. Only 5 on the lead lap survived all of that. Wow. Muller, Henderson, Harrod, Roos, and Campbell are the only drivers who did not lose significant time for the incident. Let that silence sink in with 24 laps to go, Christian.
Yeah, and I mean, now this is where you're going to have the problem of not having enough cars to kind of step out to make a move, because everybody knows that one car steps out to make the pass. Well, do you go with him, or do you just leave him out there and take the solo spot? You know, I think they're probably just going to do that. They're just going to take them one spot at a time and kind of dupe people out into giving up position.
Here's a look at the replay, and watch the outside run. Walker, who's had a rough one today, hits the wall.
Yeah, it just got too high and then was grabbing the wall on exit. You do pick up some understeer kind of as the banking drops away, and obviously when you're behind somebody, you're already kind of moving towards a tight condition because you've got less front downforce than you already would if you were running in clean air, and it can catch you out. It's very easy to have happen. We also don't know what the wind direction is coming off of 2 there. If it kind of is a crosswind, that can make it even worse. And you know, everybody behind him just unfortunately piling into the back of him there. There's just nowhere to go.
Conway and Chalet are working together now in 6th and 7th reference. They are 9, make it 10 seconds back. Facciaponte and Monerwich grouped together 20 seconds back. Thomas Cope, he's 46 seconds back, with Holman and Solo working together as well. They have all gone on the lead lap, and they're all in front of the new race leader in Muller. This race, you can't really choose a winner with how this is broken out. You may choose the pace car, and they can still find a way to lose the lead with 10 to go.
Muller's not going to push up. He's not going to go up. He's not going to attack and go through. He only needs to defend at this point, and he'll be very happy the fact that he's able to sit behind, wait, and watch. The moment someone tries to make a move from back in the pack to push up, he'll cover it. But when we've seen drivers try and cover it into corners so far, Justin, they haven't been able to come back down and cover the bottom line. That is what the key to this race is. Cover the top on the straight, get back down and cover the corner down as you go through.
21 laps to go this upcoming time by, and expect this to be the calm before the storm, before the hurricane, before the earthquake, before the tornado, before the additional storm, before the additional earthquake, before the sandstorm, before the tsunami, before the Daytona 500 memeing with the mixture of a tornado. Yes, you heard that all right. Everything's on the table when it comes to Daytona on iRacing, Christian.
Yep. It really is. And I mean, obviously we've got single file right now with only 5 cars in contention, but it can change around pretty quickly. And we're definitely going to see a move. It's just a question as to when we're going to see that move. Hopefully we're going to see it before the last lap, because it frustrates me to no end that it can kind of be the same as real life, where everybody waits until the last lap to then try and make a move, and you know, there's no cohesion, there's no organization, and it just sort of fizzles out, and whoever was leading just wins the race easily. So I'm hoping we don't see that. At the back of the line there, we saw a little bit Sean Campbell. Looks like he's trying to say he wants to go to the top with somebody, but nobody wants to do it right now.
You will able to know? Coming up to 19 laps to go. 5 cars to decide it. You almost have a Talladega eNASCAR situation breaking out from 2021, where somebody has to make the move, but who's willing to do it? And when do you do it is the problem. You do it too early, Christian, you lose the race. You do it too late, you lose the race. Only you end up not gaining the spots. You need to pick it right.
Yeah, you do. And kind of like we saw in that race, though, it didn't really form up. We're in a better spot to get a form up now, though, in this race, though. I think obviously it's a little bit easier to get the top going than it was then. But I can sort of see wanting to ride in line here. You know, like, this is a guaranteed top 5 if it goes green to the end. And with as crazy as a race as it's been, you can't really argue against not wanting to go for it. But at the same time, like, you want to win. You know, like,
yeah,
it's come down to you versus 4 other people. It doesn't happen that often that's the case. Surely you've got to at least try and make something happen. And you know, you got some lap cars in here as well who can help you out. They don't really have a reason to not go with you.
Keep in mind, Conway and Chalet have found some friends. Some of them are teammates. Some of them are lap cars. One of them prefers to stick to the bottom and race side by side, while everyone else wants to run in a line. That move lost them 1 second in 1 sentence.
Well, they know they're okay, because they've got that 25 seconds to Facciaponti and Melnarovic, who are the next cars in the group. And in fact, that will be going a little bit wider as they go along, because they're soon about to be caught by the leading pack. So they're not going to have too much to worry about. They know what their race is. They're racing for 6th and 7th, and they're not going to jeopardize it as teammates.
Last time by, they lost nearly 3 seconds with all the fighting. And some of the discussion coming up for lap traffic, we just mentioned some of those like Facciaponti. They're getting lapped. Here's the difference in the laps between Moore and company. The leaders are also making passes on lap cars right now. We are down to a grand total of 7 on the lead lap. Facciaponti, the first driver lap down Melnarovic in a modified, is in 9th. Sorenzo back running is 23rd, who all just got passed here.
Still a long way to go, though, and it seems silly to say that, 16 laps, but if you're not going to do anything, this race can easily be Maximilian Senna-Muller's, but someone's going to have to go through and effectively punch a couple bricks if they want to go and win this race. The first person through the wall always ends up bloody and scarred. Everyone else who scampers on in behind are the ones that take all the credit, and that's going to be the case. Whoever pushes up to the high line is going to be bloody and scarred. Whoever's going to follow with is going to end up unscathed and probably win this race.
Check myself on that point, by the way. Remember that Cope, Holman, and Solo are all on the tail end of the lead lap in front of the race leader. So technically, still 7 who are not in groupings involving the leaders with those on the lead lap. I also thought you were trying to make a swing towards a certain red and white logoed brand and a certain plumber. That doesn't end up like that usually. I don't think.
Depends what game you play.
14 to go this time by. What type of game will you play, Christian, if you were in this spot?
I mean, I'd try and get someone to go with me on the top side. I mean, I think that Sean Campbell's probably in... Well, okay, so Sean Campbell is in a good spot because he can drive a line forwards on the top if he can convince at least one other driver to go with him. the problem is that he's in a bad spot because he's always going to be pushing. You know, he's not going to get the momentum on his own. Even if say Roos ducks out with him, Campbell isn't going to win because he's just going to be pushing Roos. And it's not really possible for him to kind of drop him out or whatnot. The driver who's probably got the most realistic chance of stealing this away is probably Pete Herod, because if he jumps out and everybody goes with him, there's a good chance that the lap cars will potentially go up to try and block any run, you know, because they're trying to obviously stay on the lead lap, albeit at the very end of the lead lap. And I think that would be my play, to try and jump out in the hope that those cars, and I would do this early, I would do this probably with say 5 to go, and hope that those drivers don't want to go down a lap, and they'll go up there to cover you off, but in covering you off, it would trap Senna Muller in amongst them, and you'd just be ahead by the time that you came around to the flag.
And the important thing to consider on top of that conversation too, especially with those lap cars in front here, not a single car, from my understanding at least, has a working relationship technical alliance-wise. None of them are exactly teammates to one another entering today. So in other words, remember the term friends are where you find them? We'll see which drivers like each other and which drivers do not, with who they follow suit with here in about 12 laps for the checkered flag.
I'm wondering as well, with just how late it is in the game, if people aren't really trying to push it because they want to make sure they've got margin on fuel so they can go and attack on that high line. No point going out there to the high line, making it work, and then suddenly, uh-oh, tank empty. I think this is part of the game. They're happy to have lap cars in front of them right now, but when it gets to the crunch time in about 6 laps from now, so we're talking about 5 minutes, we know we're going to have a race right at the end, as we are just under 3 hours at estimate right now for total race time.
Coming up to 11 laps to go here this time around. Who will be the one who leads in a few miles' time? Keep in mind that things have gotten interesting in terms of how things have been Grizzly TFR in general, whether it's them trying to recover here for most of their contenders, or whether it's Travis Henderson hoping his technical side of things hold on in the lead pack. Remember the dynasty they've technically built, Christian, coming into this year, and one car says hello to the grass. What in the world happened here?
It was just a solo deal. I was actually watching him at the time. Schleray came off of 4. It looked like he was a little bit high and really swung it down to the bottom of the track. A huge overcorrection.
I don't know why he went a lane and a half up here, Jake, before spinning down the track there.
I don't know either, but this is what we were saying here, Justin, that it's a 200-lap race. People lose concentration at the most crucial of times, and he's fortunate he is still in this race and still has a car.
Remember the spiel about losing focus? It's coming to play at another near spin in that pack whip, by the way. Chris Barrett had the same wiggle in the same corner exit. Is that set up at this point, Christian? Keep in mind, the track has stayed cool, but it's the coolest it's been today, 82 Fahrenheit now.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's related to that for sure. It seems likely if it's 2 cars from the same team having the same problem in the same place.
Under 10 laps to go, by the way, around the racetrack. And this pack is deciding to get very antsy, with some of the teammates wanting to help each other get max spots in the lineup. That includes Cologne trying to get to the top line. The race leaders are staying calm for retrospective. The number 50 is looking to see that retrospective, see them fight for as high as possibly 11th in this pack if things go the right way for them. Cologne regathers it up, but he won't get the bump draft needed, Christian, so to speak. I think it's hard to bump without a front clip.
Yeah, certainly changes the dynamics of it a little bit, that's for sure. And that's before you even get into kind of how the car's going to run like that and how easy it's going to be to actually get to the bumper to push.
And now they're side drafting each other here again. This is all 1 lap down, but this is the conversation for the lucky dog. If things get antsy here for a caution, St. Galli dunking under the yellow line. All the other race leaders in the main group, for reference, still single file at the other end of the racetrack down the back straightaway. No one's made the same moves they are at this point. I think at this point, Jake, 11 on back has realized we're not catching up unless someone makes a mistake.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And mistakes can happen in stages. Of course, it is worth noting you've got the 2 green-white checkers if something does happen inside the final 5 laps of this race. And so if you keep that in perspective, there is still a chance that this race isn't quite over just yet. They're pretty much on it, and that's another question. Who's actually put themselves in a position to think about the green-white? The last thing you want to do is get into a position where you're 2 laps to go, green-white checker. Oh no, I've got to come in for a splash and dash.
Still 2 by 2 in the second big grouping of cars right now, and some cars have to pit. Russell can't make it to the end, neither can Dallas Pataska. They're both several laps down. They both have to pit, and will lose an additional lap before the end here.
Yeah, it's a surprise. I can only assume they were trying to stay out and get a wave by that never happened for them. And that's why they're now short on fuel and having to come down.
So that reduces the numbers in that respective pack. Remember, the last round winner in the defending champion, Dallas Pataska, with a horrific first oval race of the season. In a car classification he's known for dominating in. Tides change in the span of a winter. But with 5 to go, go ahead.
I wonder if they're starting to just move and maneuver. We saw a bit of gapping there in the main pack, and they've just started to just close it back up together again. Muller's giving himself about a half a car to the cars in front, and they are catching more lap traffic here as they go about. So this could get really interesting here and dicey. It depends how those 3 of lap traffic want to get by, likes of Solo, Homan, Cope, Schlereil's going to be in that as well. This is going to be where you have to make your money.
High five from Barney the Flagman down to the final laps at Daytona for the Majors Series and its European Pro Split. The 7 elects to stay low with a caution. It's the second group. The second group has come apart. It's David H. Baker who brings out the caution late in this one.
It was Rainier's in the wall, and he came together with the 58 of Michele Sangali as he tried to gather it back up. Baker was collateral in all of that, and that's why we have a caution at Daytona so late in the race.
He was the one who spun around down the back straightaway, keep in mind Baker. But now, it gets wild. Watch corner exit Christian, the number 8. He goes from nightmares to sleep, sleep, sleet. Sweet dreams.
And you see, it's what we saw again with Walker, where you just drift up and you're following a car and you drift up into the wall at exit. Kind of unfortunate deal, though. Ended up wiping out one of his own team cars with that mistake.
And in turn, sets up a wild finish possibly, and or either a natural GWC or the first available in the allotment. Here's an hour look.
What do you do in that situation if you're car 33? Because it just breaks on you like a wave crashing down against the shore. There's nothing you can really argue against it. It's almost as if it was natural it was going to happen.
So sweet dreams and sleet-filled dreams mean we come to the trigger for the GWC when they will likely be doubling up Christian. So that would be the first attempt likely coming up.
Yeah, now I think my pick for this would be Henderson. It talks about how that top line gets a really nice run off of 2. Unless, I mean, if Henderson gets a good start and he's at least able to stay alongside, send him all the way through 1 and 2, I think he's going to have a nice line build up behind him for a push. Are they actually going to come down and pit?
Oh, they're going to make sure they can get to the end of the GWC here. Because that's a thought too, Christian. If you stay out and run out of gas during a green-white checkered, you're not going to make the finish with that.
Yeah, but they weren't that tight on fuel, though. That's really surprising.
There's also the case as well of taking two tires and giving yourself a huge advantage.
Or repairs like Facciaponte has the chance like right here. Albeit he's a lap down and likely gets a penalty for this, maybe.
Yeah, he will do that. It'll be a entered closed pit.
Disqualification for Chris Barrett. He is the first and only who has hit the incident limit, by the way, today. There is a 26-point incident limit for today, and he has managed to be the only one to hit it so far. Ramirez is taking manual repair this caution. Manarich the same. Cope, he's in 10th, kept the lead lap with the caution. Cologne was involved in the incident, would have been the lucky dog before that trouble.
And so you start looking at it now. Howard, Roos, Campbell, Henderson, Conway. You start wondering here who's got the ability to charge on through this field, give themselves what they want, and really put themselves up there to say, I can go out there, I can win this race. You look at someone like Maximilian Senna-Muller, who's back there in 6th position with Travis Henderson, who's actually back there a bit now. This is not going to be a guarantee. This is not going to be easy, and they've got a lot of work to get through, but it is Pete Howard who will have control of the field, and it is a very accomplished field up at the front who'll be fighting for the win under the green-white checkers.
Cordell Cologne is now officially scored at the end of the lead lap. 11 are moved up to that total, despite the trouble. First green-white checker attempt is up. 2 are available for today. If we get a caution flag before we take the white flag, we will rack them and stack them for one final time. And at that point, if we get a caution before the white, race would end under yellow. If we do take the white, they will race to the checker to decide the winner. And that has seen some significantly wild finishes in the past in major series competition. It's Handsome Pete in the race lead. Gabriel Ruse is in 2nd. Campbell's in 3rd. Conway currently amongst the top 4. Also battling out with Jens Holman, who's in the top 5. Theo Chalet is in 6th position total. You also have Sowell, Moore, Henderson, Cope, and Cologne, who are all on the lead lap. Cologne, though, despite a fresh car, will have to start at the tail.
We've got some serious confusion going on in the lineup right now. The pace car lights are off, but nobody is formed up past about 4th spot.
Yeah, and I think that's partly because the Apex drivers are trying to figure out where they're supposed to be. What is going on here?
Well, the lap traffic's got to get to the back, and everyone who's in position to fight for it's got to get to the front. That's what's causing the confusion. And they are going to duck and weave and dip and dive and dodge like it's a game of dodgeball to get into line. Most of them are, with just Cope and Cologne who have to get there. They're all in line at the front. We're going to get a race out of 4.
This to decide the winner of the Daytona 500 for the European Pro Split for the Major Series for 2022. Pace car is off, green flag is out, 2 to go from Daytona.
Oh, Schlere's so slow off of that restart, and that's going to really hurt the front line. It's a pack of 2, and it's robbed away from Roos. Conway goes down to the bottom. He wants Schlere to help him as they push to 1 and 2.
No help still from Ruse. Here comes the run now for the 71. He looks to line it up, but Campbell takes the top. The RSR Esports driver gets the bump. Here comes the block from Handsome Pete.
Hold your breath right now. He's got to block 2 lanes because look at that lane go. Conway trying to think about under the apron.
Turn.
Now be a caution. We got 1 left.
1 car upside down. It's Gabriel Ruse. He slides down the banking. Caution is out. 1 more attempt at a green-white checkered.
Wow. You look at it and you just thought they're going to be aggressive. They're going to push for it. And the moment Conway started looking and you give that little gap from the 7 who can't follow, he tries to follow in the tracks of Conway and the 13 just doesn't budge. Danny Solo decides he's not going to budge. He makes the tap on the back and it's that counterweight again that says, no, you're going straight into Roos, buddy.
And there's the flip right there. Neither of these cars you see on screen have a fast repair either. Likely the end of their days for the Great American Race. Here's another look.
Yeah, you can kind of see what unfolds here. Obviously, Herod goes down to block the 42 and the 7, and everybody's stacked there. And that kind of jumps the 7 a bit out of line, and 13 just isn't really... I'm not sure whether he just doesn't get off him or if he's not able to get off him and eventually just pushes him around. And it's unfortunate for Roos because he was just riding in the top lane and got completely flipped upside down and destroyed.
Let's take a look at one of the modifieds. This is a car without a hood. A rough day for the 265. What's a little bit more engine block being crushed in to add to insult to injury, right?
Well,
I mean,
they don't ask
nose
you
is
how,
gone.
they ask you how many, right?
Right.
Look at the bright side. At least it's not one of those not top 10 clips posted on social media by iRacing this week where you had a car literally land on top of your hood.
That was brilliant. I saw that. I thought that was rather funny.
I don't think the driver thought that, but still.
Oh, come on. I know what you're saying, like, and you would just be like, I've got the worst luck ever, but I think afterwards you would laugh about that. Because I don't think I can recall a single time in a race where I've been going around a corner and a car cartwheeling has then landed on my hood and taken me out. It's just one of those things that just never happens.
For reference, there's a similar situation breaking out for Sportsman Action where they've had a lot happen. They've had some of the Grizzly TFR cars get freight trained. They've had a crash coming to the final laps of the race. And they also talked about if turtles and their shells qualify for clothing or housing. Yes, you heard that right too. It's been interesting there too. They are in the same lap totals as Pro today, for reference in sync, coming to the final laps of this race. That just shows the closeness for some of the drivers speed-wise. Pace to pace, strategy to strategy, to be that close between the top two splits.
And this is what you love about racing. It comes down to the finest of margins, and even though it's one race here and one race there, it's exactly the same. And now, what do you do? Where can you go, and how do you push forward for it? Harrod did so well on that first restart. He's just got to do it again. But the questions will be asked on how far can you go, and do you have enough to get yourself to exactly where is needed? These are the questions that must be asked now as they start to form up right now, and it's telling to see the 42 of Conway a little slow to get alongside. I think he's still trying to save a little bit for that green-white run.
Yeah, this is the final attempt. If we take a yellow flag before we get a white flag at the flag stand and cross the line is the critical mark, the race will end under yellow and behind the pace car, similar fashion to what happened last year, just with the GWCs included. Remember, last year was with the 1987 stock cars. But for Handsome Pete, he looks for his first victory of the season in a stock car. Conway looks to break through again in the 42. Campbell looks to try and take a victory after having some moments and then some all day. And then you have a car who is a lap down most of the day, and Daniel Solo, who's known for being a stock car specialist in 4th. Oh, by the way, there's also a clean car in 5th. What did I say about being able to predict a winner? It could be anybody, including Barney and or Benny.
Yes, absolutely. And now it will come down through 3 and 4, the run, and who can make 2 laps happen here at Daytona.
2 laps to go for the Major Series and its European Pro Split Daytona 500 for 2022. Team Matt on the inside, Apex Tech on the outside. Pace car is off. 5 miles to go. Back underway.
Again, it's a little slow from the 3rd lane there as they start to push. Now you've got to have a friend as you get going. Harrod will need a friend in the form of Campbell, but he's not helping again. Conway wants that low line, and it is very much a mad scramble as the outside fails to really materialize until right now. Help from Thomas Cope, who'd been a lap down prior to the work that had been done to get himself back to the lead lap.
And the top contenders have settled themselves down. Solo getting some bumps now from Cope. Again, if they take the white flag, the race is official to the stripe, pending review. But it's now Campbell, who wants to get himself to the top. White flag waits up in the stands. Final lap for Daytona. Who will win the 500?
Oh, Harrod's trying to cover, but he's in the middle now. He's going to get freight trained here as they go through 4 wide, as they go to 1.
Conway gets pinched under the O-line. A big check him in the bottom. Up to the lead goes Danny Sowell. He brings in Thomas Cope with him.
Oh, they're rubbing, they're wrecking behind.
Russell gets turned to the back of the group. Into the wall goes Handsome Pete. It's down to 3 cars for the race win. Sowell, Cope, and Campbell. Who will make the move first? Campbell makes the duck. Cope with the duck. The block. The dive. The second block. Thomas Cope to the inside. Will Campbell get a run back? To the checker flag. Thomas Cope wins the Daytona 500.
Oh my goodness, and he spent the majority. In fact, I'll say this, with 5 laps to go, he was on the front of the lead group, but nearly a lap down. That is incredible driving from the 64.
Absolute insanity. And the celebrations already are underway after that one. A wild finish and some wild rides on the final lap, but in the end, it's Thomas Cope who recovers from early troubles to lead the lap that matters to win it at Daytona. Just what can you say, Christian?
I mean, it's pretty wild. I mean, the last lap with it being 4 wide, I really didn't think we were going to get everybody through that, but, you know, we did have a couple of guys spinning off it too, but overall, you know, it all came down to timing of the move and just being out ahead, because we knew the pack was going to disintegrate. Obviously, it went to 1 lap and there was an incident and whatnot, and Cope just nailed the last move at the end of the race to take the lead. It's so difficult when you're the leader of a 3-car line and you know that the 2 guys behind are going to try and leave you out. And I think if he'd only gone up to the middle, he could have been blocked. But because he went all the way to the top and then swung it down, he just had too much momentum to be blocked, and that's what won him the race.
Burn it down, Thomas. Well deserved for the checkered flag run today. In a race that had it all. Post-race coverage coming up in just a moment. You're watching GSRC. Stay tuned.
This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in endorsed series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to tonight's coverage of the Major Series in its European Pro Split for the Daytona 500 after a wild final run to the checkered. It took 2 GWCs, but Thomas Cope goes on to lead 21 laps to win after this wild lap, starting off with this moment.
4 wide to begin with, and then you just got to shuffle into lanes, and everyone decides that, okay, we need to start moving. 21 and 27 come together as they push 3 wide, makes it a race of 3. This is where you have to start being brave, and Christian, you said it absolutely perfectly here. It was too much of a block up front, and that gave Cope enough to just dive back underneath.
See it right there indeed.
Just no way to block that. Just too much momentum with Cope. But it only worked because he went all the way to the top. You know, if he'd only just gone up like a half lane or something like that, it wouldn't have worked. But it kind of, that whole last lap by Cope, even from the beginning when it was the 4 wide, it all comes down to picking which lane you can maintain as much momentum as possible in. And he just did it perfectly. You know, like you see here, he could have gone and pushed solo. And he like, it's so hard to describe how you can't you can't really like come up with like a good method of doing it. You just sort of have to trust that you've made the right decision and you commit to it. And I guarantee that you wouldn't lift it at all at any point for probably the last lap and a half, because that's like, if you have momentum in a pack, as we see quite the interesting somersault there, if you have momentum in the pack with 1-2 to go, you really have the ability to either push someone else to win the race or win the race yourself. And if you can stop someone jumping out and blocking you, it's just huge. And he was able to do that. You know, he picked the right cars to follow at the right time, and it meant that he had enough going into 3 to have that shot at winning. And it just timed it perfectly.
Let's take a look at the unofficial race results. Again, the key word with all the craziness today, unofficial. One driver did get a disqualification for incident points on the final lap. That was 323, Gabriel Ruse. Thomas Cope, though, beat Sean Campbell, Daniel Solo, the top 3, to win the 500. Conway and Cologne rounded out the top 5 in this one. Then it's Moore, Chalet, Rain, Holman, Henderson, who finished the top 10. Remember, most of those in the top 10 involved in the last lap calamity, Jake.
Absolutely. Pete Howard had a chance. He led going into the final laps, and it all sort of fell apart for him there. 11th it will be, with Gabriel Ruse out then in the 12th. Thatcher Ponte had been up there the majority of the race. It's 13th for him. Alexander Russell 14th, and then Michele Sangali. There's a lot of good work being done by the likes of the TFR Grizzly cars there. David Melnarovic certainly proved that. And I would say not the end of the world today for car 23, Dallas Pataska, the reigning champion, not having a good day at the office. But what you can say is that is a very, very good missed result. 17th here today. Bram Renier's 18th. Ryan Walker spent a lot of time at the back in 19th. It's not a good day if you have just one letter in the middle of your name, because David H. Baker also found troubles today, 5 laps down.
And moving outside of the top 20, Mario Schroer, he's the last car that was really running at the end there, 6 laps down in 21st. Chris Barrett, after such a good run last time out at Watkins Glen, just never really came together for him. Started 3rd, unfortunately, 22nd. David Soranzo, we saw him featured towards the end of the race. Could have had a shot at winning it, just all unraveled for him, unfortunately, finishes 23rd. Thomas Geisler, another driver that we saw up in those front fights, he's in 24th. Julian Jean, he had a good race as well, but again, in that last quarter, it just unraveled for him. And then for Henrik Wielet, really the same deal, and this is pretty much true for everybody in this kind of back 15 or so drivers. Jan Ricks, 27th. Mark Redford, really, really unfortunate penalty. I'll actually get in touch with him to figure out what happened there. He comes home 28th. Antonio Navarro, 29th. Tom Dreiling, we didn't really talk about him all day, comes home 30th, but 78 laps down.
31st spot today in this one. Multiple laps down, 123 to be precise, with Scott Brazier. Then it's Haycox, 32nd. Then Hashimi parked it on the apron, 144 laps down at 33rd. Tool involved in the early troubles, 34th. Then you have Bobrovsky, who was a contender early, involved in some of the big ones with lap traffic at 36. Miguel Freitas, 36 in turn. Ross Banfield finished 37th after his no good, not great, very bad day at Daytona. La Barba, Bra, and Wolf rounded out the entrants today. Wolf 194 laps down. But in the end, only one could survive to take the checkered. It was a race that had it all. Strategy, carnage, controversy, drama, emotion. Thomas Cope, you're the winner of the Major Series European Pro Splits Daytona 500 for 2022. How does it feel to get it done on a last lap pass?
It's been an absolute roller coaster of emotions, this race. Going from a 1.2 laps down to a lap down consistently, and then running at the lead pack just in front of the leaders, and then obviously the caution towards the end to get us back to the lead. I mean, my biggest thanks, and if you can, Charles Michel, who's in waiting as well. He's been all in my ears, doing so much, keeping me in check, and he's sorted it all out for me.
Charles now joining us as well in this one. And Charles, talk us through your perspective as the spotter, trying to help Thomas Cope figure things out. 1 point, you were laps down before getting yourself in this spot. Also at one point had to be one of the last cars in the lead lap, leading the pack at some points. What was it like trying to command your driver and friend to victory?
Thomas is such a great driver. It's basically just, giving him holes to work toward, and keeping him level, because we got caught a lap down early, but we just have to play the long game and take time and just be patient. Don't do anything crazy. Try to avoid the trouble where you can, and then hope for a little racing luck in the end.
Ask you this, Tom, is in terms of how significant this is, again, breaking through at the pro level in the major series, how big is this for you and your campaign to break through, second race of the season, and you break through to win the first oval event in the first long full distance race of the year?
It means so much. I mean, this was not one of the races I thought in the campaign I would potentially come and win. I know I had a good shot just with how close the racing is, but I'm not an oval driver by any means. I mean, you've got big guys like Sean behind, Dallas Pataska in the field. You have a really strong field, and just being at the top of that field right now I'm crying. I'm literally crying.
Anyone you want to thank for your run today?
Yeah. Charles, obviously, was in here. My family, they've helped me out. I mean, I wasn't even here for the last couple of days. They've rushed me back from a holiday just for this race. Everyone in the team who's been helping me out as well, and a couple of the guys who couldn't make the race who have been helping as well throughout the week, and just everyone who's been around me this whole week, really.
Congratulations on making history today.
Thank you.
Thomas Culp and his spotter, Charles, once again speaking with us from Victory Lane, virtual Victory Lane after this run. The next spot went the direction of one Jamie Conway we'll have the chance to speak with. He had a strong time at the road courses last time out. This time out, it's fourth, but he was in the mix, Jake, before the final lap craziness.
Jamie, you were right up there. It looked like that the team had to work really hard in the middle of the race to give yourself that opportunity at the end, and it just looked like for that one sweet second that you were going to put yourself in, but the first green-white checker, I think, just put the real finishing mark on what was a really good attempt in this race today.
Yeah, wow, what a race. The team did an amazing job. I feel really sorry for the guys, some of whom were really unlucky earlier on, and I've come out lucky again at the front, but huge thanks to them because they were checking the strategy, giving me the draft in the middle portion. We were well up on fuel compared to the rest of the field, and that enabled me to get to the end with one stop. I had an advantage over the field, but at the end I was on fumes. I ran out of fuel over the line for the second green-white checkered, and in the caution before the green-white checkered, I got absolutely sideswiped. So I had no straight line speed, so I knew I wasn't going for the win, which is why I pulled down. I had to pull down into the inside lane at the first green-white checkered, and somehow I got pushed across the line to P4. Just hanging in there.
Well, you were able to hang in there. You are able to get fourth place. And how crucial is this in the long form of the season, knowing that a day like today, you kept yourself relatively out of trouble. You got yourself this strong result when others around you maybe didn't have so much of that ability to do so. When you consider how diverse this championship is, do you feel like days like today are the ones at the end of the season that you're going to look back on and say, this is the one that won me the championship and not the victories?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, 3 weeks ago, you guys asked us, me and Chris, you're like, well, how do you feel about the ovals? I mean, if you'd have told me I'd be walking away with P4, I'd have, bitten your arm off for it. Absolutely run with it because it's not our expertise, but this really has set a precedent for the rest of the season, and we just hope we can keep it up now. Now we've got the lead in the championship. Very exciting.
And now you talk about that excitement, you talk about where the next bit of future lies in terms of the attacks. You come through to today, you give yourself a race that really put you in with an opportunity of making something happen. Now you start to sort of gear up for the next rounds of the championship. And in terms of how the team's looking, this was your first foray really into oval. Do you feel like it's something you're sticking with? Do you feel like it's something you're going to look at and go, you know what, this was actually fun. I might try and make a push for it on the older official side.
Yeah, 100%. We were just saying at the end of the race there, it's so exciting at the end. And the guys, Chris and the other guys, they're saying, oh, fancy having to go at the official one now, which is not something we've done so much of. So, I love it. I think it's brilliant racing. And anyone who thinks that, it's not as challenging as road racing or anything like that, they don't know how difficult it is. Full respect to the guys who are really pro at this, because it's hard work. And yeah, really enjoy it. So looking forward to the next rounds in the Indy cars and in the stock cars as well. Yeah, can't wait.
Floor's yours. Shout out sponsors. Who gets it done, Jamie?
Yeah, well, once again, it wouldn't happen without Apex Technologies, Ryan Donaher and EJ Fulner behind the scenes. Good luck to them tonight in the Americas region as well. So Apex Technologies US, the new simware supply brand, Apex Tech Racing Supply as well, partnering with Pro Sim Rig, BPS simulators as well, Base Performance, and our old sponsors TPI, Meridian, Hippo Sports Management as well. And like I say, the teammates, they did an amazing job. Kamal Hashimi, particularly on the strategy, Blaze behind the scenes as well. Teo was right up there at the end, so all of them did an amazing job.
Well, there you have it. Jamie Conway coming away with 4th position overall. Just
one of his teammates also standing on by. We'll get the chance to speak with Christian Challenger today, and it had some dramatic moments, including nearly spinning off a turn 4. Christian Challenger is with the El Chalet.
It looked like it was kind of a bit of a interesting end for the race for you. I was just watching back the last green-white checkout. It looked like you just had too much damage to really stick with the pack, and that was really unfortunate because earlier in the race, we'd seen that you were obviously able to run at the front. You and the Apex Tech guys had a really good strategy. You got very, very unlucky, and I think it was the second caution which kind of put you guys really behind the 8 ball. But all things considered, and how much of a setback through the mid-race you had, you got to be pretty happy with the 7th, right?
Yeah, for sure. Considering that at the moment was 1 lap down, yeah, I'm pretty happy as the team takes the lead of the team championship. So yeah, pretty happy.
Well, it definitely seemed like it was quite a team-based race. We obviously saw the TFR cars, yourselves with the Apex Tech cars, all kind of trying to form up. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what the strategy was for if the race had gone green to the end? We heard Jamie was talking about that you guys felt like you were really good on fuel. You might have been able to make a bit of a different play, maybe kind of sneak everybody to the front at the end?
Well, actually, no. For Jamie, it was really, really close. Everyone brains were just fuming, were just heating up because of thinking about if he had to pit or not. But as I didn't have anything to lose there, I preferred to go safely and just take a bit of fuel and be a bit at the back.
That definitely makes sense, and next time out, obviously it's a very different deal again. It's going to be the Legacy V8 Supercars at RM Park or Sandown if it's available. We've kind of had three very different races. Obviously, the first one was Watkins Glen, LMP2 and GT3s is kind of a pretty standardized thing for everybody, really, I would say. Now, next round is a pretty similar car to this one, just in a totally different setting on a road course. What are your kind of thoughts on that event?
Well, I think that I will have to learn everything from scratch because I didn't race on this track for a long time and never in these cars, so I will have to learn everything.
I definitely think it'll be quite a similar deal for everybody in that sense. Obviously, it's a bit of a different track, and obviously a car that's been sort of out of use for a while. So I don't think you'll be behind too much in that sense. Before we let you go, is there anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Well, actually, to my whole team, actually, because they after the previous the first race, I was really down after my crash. So. But they supported me quite a lot, and to get me back on track.
It was definitely a great result, all things considered, and a really good comeback. So good luck for the next round, and congratulations on the top 10.
Yeah, thank you.
Once again, that's Chalet from 7th position. I'd like to thank him, Jamie Conway, Thomas Cope for taking the time to speak with us during post-race coverage. And I'll start with you, Jake, because Daytona was wild. Daytona was expected to be wild. And it definitely had a mixture of it all today before the emotional victory from the 64th Cope.
Absolutely, and this is what makes Daytona the world center of racing, is that you get racing that you just do not expect to see from there to the end. If you told me with 5 laps to go in that race, the guy who was almost a lap down in that field was going to go and win it all, I'd have bitten your arm off. That's not what you normally expect. This place just puts on the sublime and the incredible time and time again. And this is why it's America's great race. And this today was why this was the European region's great sim race.
I like that indeed. Believe someone's going to use that, possibly. Christian, next race is going to be intriguing, though. Supercar action, Australia. Track still to be determined depending on what comes up in the upcoming build. Any hints on what to expect next month?
Absolutely no hints. No hints at all.
Okay.
But I do think it will be a good round. Obviously, V8 Supers is. I feel like we didn't have a V8 Supercar round last season, and that was, crazy to me because V8 Supers Bathurst was kind of a staple of the series for a long time. So I'm glad to be going back to those cars. I think whatever track it is ran on, it will be a really good event.
Heard a hint there mixed in, but either way. I'd like to thank you for tonight's action here from Daytona. I'd also like to thank the Majors Series and its whole organization group for all the work they put on for this series. We'd also like to take the time to remind you again of the sponsor of the Majors Series, the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Again, use the promo code MajorsGSRC10 for 10% off, or rather Majors GSRC. They have a link in the description here for this YouTube broadcast below that applies to this specific offer. Again, Majors GSRC for 10% off. We'd also like to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for our broadcast, listed up on screen now. Additional thanks go to Jude Lawner as well, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, and Jake, Christian, Zach, and Dougie. You can find out more information about GSRC at globalsimracingchannel.com or through our social media listed on screen down below. Also check out the merchandise store at gsrc.stormvy.com. We keep a link in the description as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Keep in mind that there's plenty of action around the corner on GSRC. This includes a race Christian Challenger will be in for the Major Series and its American Pro Split. 2 eNASCAR drivers, current competitors, will be in the field. Nick Ottinger, Blake Reynolds, to prepare for their run in a couple weeks' time as well. Coverage starts 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time for pro action on GSRC. As well, the next round will take place, as mentioned, in Australia with supercar action. That track to be determined depending on what comes up in just about a month's time. You also have upcoming races as listed on screen, including some visiting this track. For more information, check those out. Mark them down in your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.